Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us on AXIOM Curb Radio tonight. Today's day is Tuesday the 11th of November 2014. My guests tonight will be Andy, Albert and possibly a couple of others later on in the show. So we're just going to go over now and say hello to Andy and Albert if we've got them online and see how these are doing. We shall soon see. You come across anything today, Andy? Any news, information around?
I've been sort of preoccupied with visitors today.
Oh, you've had some, well, the officials or family?
Oh no, nothing. Yeah, no officialdom visits. No, just family. That's all, PK.
Cool.
Hello, can you hear?
Yep, I can hear you, Albert.
Lovely.
Evening, Albert.
Hello there.
Are you alright?
I'm alright. What's the subject under discussion tonight?
Magna Carta.
What do you want to know about Magna Carta?
I think we was on there the other night, and I think PJ sent you a message. I think you was on Skype chat with somebody else or something, and I heard we were saying about seizing of the barons or stroke queens, whatever.
Yeah.
The under Article 61, and I think you said it was just the castles, but doesn't it state possession, land and possessions in the Article 61, Albert?
Well, it does. It does. It's basically the lands and possessions of the sovereign. That's not necessarily your local town hall. You could say that it's your local courthouse because it's the Queen's Court. But, you know, at the end of the day, from our point of view, if somebody seizes a town hall and holds it for 2 weeks, that's good publicity.
Yeah.
From my mind, I think we'd be better off, if you're going to organise something like that, to do something more spectacular and go for the White Tower in the Tower of London, which is directly the Queen's. And I think that you would do that, because I've given this a bit of thought, you would do that by everybody going and paying your entrance fee to the Tower of London to go in, and when you get in, you all carry in with you a holdall full up with biscuits and bars of chocolates and bottles of water and stuff, lemonade, whatever it is you want to take with you, water's better. And then you walk into the White Tower, and once you're all in the White Tower, you then shut the door and just bar the door so nobody else can get in. Now the only way into the White Tower, well there's two ways really, I suppose they could drop people on the roof from a helicopter, but the only way in from the ground is up a pair of makeshift wooden steps which go up about 10 feet in the ground. So, you know, if on your way into the White Tower, you left a few people outside to actually pull the steps down and wreck them, then that makes life an awful lot harder for anybody else wanting to get in. Because the door, as I say, is about 10 feet off the ground, and it's designed like that in order to prevent people getting in through the door. So, you know, what our forefathers put there to do, we should utilise fully. Once you're in the White Tower, and you've shut the doors, you could let people out, i.e. the security staff or whatever, you can let them out, any Japanese visitors who don't want to stay there, let them out, and just let them down by hand, and lower them down by hand to somebody outside who can take them as they come down. But the object of the exercise is to have something fairly spectacular. Now if you've got, say, 40 or 50 people in the White Tower, all of whom have a holdall over their shoulder, all of whom have that holdall full up with bottles of fresh water and with bars of chocolate and whatever as compo rations, Then in point of fact, you could stand in the tower, you could stay there for 2 weeks probably, if you were economical with what you fed and what you ate and what you drank. And in the meantime, of course, it's going to be impossible for the authorities really to keep that quiet, because it's going to be major newsworthy, because you're going to have people out on the outside anyway who are going to be on the phone to the BBC and ITV and CNN and God knows who else, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, telling them that you're in there and what you're doing. And of course, once you're in there, you know, it's very difficult for anybody else to get in, because, to say, the door is 10 feet off the ground, it's solid oak. Once it's been shut and barred, they're going to find it difficult to break it down. They won't want to go and blow it off its hinges, because that's, you know, it's a major door, it's a major part of English heritage, so they won't want to damage the White Tower at all. And as long as you're in there and seizing it, and you're stating quite clearly that why you're seizing it and everything else, or at least your people outside are stating that to the press, then that makes the whole effort worthwhile, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, definitely.
It does. And I say, the Tower of London is directly owned by the, well, like insofar as the Queen doesn't own actually anything, but it's hers to hold in trust for those who follow on. So it's directly owned by the Crown. So you are seizing Crown property, fully in line with Magna Carta, Article 61. Another idea which somebody put up, which I thought was pretty brilliant, was if people went out and they hired for themselves some medieval costume and some medieval tents, like you see in the films of Knights in Armour, which you could hire that stuff. So if you hired out some tents and some costumes, and you sort of drove down past one of the royal parks, say Green Park or something like that, and then you dumped all the stuff off the back of a lorry, everybody grabbed a bag of gear, ran into the park, you put up your tents, you change your clothes from your ordinary everyday business suit or jeans, whatever it is you're wearing, to medieval costume, and you simply declare that you're taking over, say Green Park, under Article 61 of Magna Carta, because Green Park is a royal park. So you do it that way. And that would be quite spectacular, because it would be bright colours from all the tents and the clothing. And people could walk around dressed up as knights in shining armour with swords and battle axes and shields. And, all the girls could wear sort of voluptuous gowns and all the rest of it, and it would be a period piece set using the type of clothing that was worn in the court of in King John's time. So that would be very good from a photographer's point of view, from the filmmaker's point of view, from the news camera's point of view. That would be very good, because they could fly over the park on a helicopter, and they could get the whole lot from an aerial view, and it would just be a medieval scene, a jousting tournament or something,
Yeah, I know.
Green Park is a public asset, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
But it's a royal park.
That's right. But the thing is, you've got to make sure that that is what it is, rather than, because people say, oh, well, it's just like the Occupy lot with the Tarponian battle the other week in where was it?
But will it be enough to stop the EU police from acting on it?
Well, I don't know about the EU police. I mean, our police would be the people that would worry about it, and it would in fact be the parks police rather than the Metropolitan Police.
Yeah.
Because the parks police are specifically authorised in the parks. So, it'd be a thing with Royal Parks Police, and provided it was peaceful, and provided there was, no no major incidents there, I can't see why the police would even want to move you. And of course the beauty of that is that people can drive past the park and just chuck you out bags of food every day, can't they? Which you can cook on your open barbecues.
Yeah. You know, I can actually see that materialising one day in the near future.
Yeah. You know, but I mean, it's okay. I mean, there's this town hall that's been taken over, isn't there?
Stoke, isn't it?
It was a court. Yeah, it was a courthouse,
yeah,
wasn't it?
It's Stoke. Yeah, there's a town hall up in Stoke-on-Trent been taken over, and that's good, but it's not actually. It's not actually, is it, royal property?
Yeah.
Well, it was the next courthouse, wasn't it? Originally, was it?
Yeah.
Courthouse,
Oh,
and then it's they're going to try and sell. Wasn't the council or something going to sell it, put it on the market, or?
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
they
Yeah.
may well have been doing, because they're selling off all the family silver, aren't they? Local government, national government are selling all the family silver. As fast as they can sell it, they're selling it.
Because when I read a little bit of an article about it, I mean, there's several articles on it, but the local newspaper of that area, I can't remember what it was called, but they were trying to put it over like, oh, they've only seized it because it's being sold, and that's all. Well, yeah, that's part of it, but it's under the Magna Carta that they're seizing it. But they tried to sort of smooth it over like it was local people losing a local building. Well, of course, that's in with it as well.
Yeah,
Trying to make that the main story. Sort of thing.
and that's why town halls and local council property is not necessarily a good idea. You want something that runs right the way back to the Queen, and then you want people outside who are actually saying to the media, no, that's not what's happening, this is what's happening. So you need some people who are media savvy and who understand, or who have been well briefed in what's going on and why it's going on, who can actually sit there and hold a sensible conversation with the media about why it's going on and what it's all about, really. And of course, if you did something like that at Regent's Park, then it could very soon, couldn't it, with lots of other people coming down to have a look, you could very soon have it as a sort of a real party atmosphere. You know, it could well end up as a real party atmosphere, and you have people coming down all the time to see what's going on, and you know, you'd end up with open top buses running down past the park, so people could look over the top of the bus and see what's going on. I mean, have a park up for 5 minutes while they have a little listen to what's going on. You know, I mean, it could be quite good to get people take down there, go down there with some musical instruments and you play music all day long and whatever, and make it more like a festival, but you're actually taking possession of a royal park.
Yeah. So really, once you've gone to that stage, you're not really looking for a negotiation as such, are you? It's all about raising.
What you're looking for, and the whole object of any of this stuff, is to wake up the sheeple around the country, isn't it?
Yeah,
and the whole object is for publicity. And you know, I mean, most people don't like what's going on in this country at the moment. Most people think government can do what they like, and you know, and they're entitled to because you voted them in and all the rest of it. So most people believe that, and therefore they won't get involved. Once it's been explained to them, and in order to get it explained to them, you need people talking on national media. You need people being interviewed by the Sun, the Daily Mirror, the Mail, the Express. You know, all putting this point across so that this is frontline news on every newspaper. You know, and it could just keep on going and rolling, couldn't it?
Yeah, well, that's been the problem, isn't it? That has been the problem.
You can't actually, can you, go over and take over Buckingham Palace, because you've got a brigade of guards protecting you, and you've got all those armed policemen, so you're going to get shot. You can't do the same thing with Windsor Castle. because you've got the brigade of guards there and all those armed policemen, so you're going to get shot. So you look at something which is 100% a tourist attraction, which is the Tower of London, isn't it? Which has got it guarded there. Yes, it is guarded by a guard regiment, but they're not really visible, not to the extent they are at Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace. And the people that you see are the yeomen of the guard, aren't they? So you're going to go there and you're going to pay your money, whatever it is to get into the Tower of London today, I've no idea. But you're going to pay your money, and once you've got into the place, you simply take it over. You could, for example, do the same thing at Westminster Abbey, couldn't you, which is not guarded at all. All you've got is a few church wardens there, but this is where we crown our kings. So you could go in there, and you could pay your 14 quid, which is what it costs to get in, which I think is bloody ridiculous. And you pay your 14 quid to go into Westminster Abbey, and then, you know, several hundred of you all line up to go in, and you go in. Once you're in there, and you've taken it over, it doesn't take several hundred to take it over, but you have several hundred outside ready to go in. And once you've taken it over, you can just quietly push the elderly security people that they've got there to one side and just open the barrier and just let everybody in. And then once everybody's in and they've all got their hold all with their bottles of water, and of course Westminster Abbey will have taps in, so you can fill up your water in the Abbey. You know, you've got all your bars of chocolate and your chocolate biscuits and whatever kind of biscuits you bloody well like, because you can live a long time on biscuits, tin biscuits. If you look at the army, compo rations in the army is little tins of strawberry jam, biscuits, bars of chocolate, and water. And you know, if you're a soldier, you're expected to be able to live on that for weeks and fight a war at the same time. So if you go in for the same type of equipment, same type of food supply, keep it basic, keep it simple, biscuits, water, bars of chocolate, you know, and you went into Westminster Abbey, say 50 of you got in there, then you sort of turned around and you walked back out to the front door again, and you just sort of said to the security people, right, you out you go, and you know, you help them out through the door, and once they're out through the door, then the doors are open and you just invite everybody in, and then you just shut the doors to the Abbey and you bolt them from the inside, and what you do is you then get people outside who are on the phones to the media and left, right, centre, and they're videoing it and putting it directly up onto YouTube. At Westminster Abbey, the place where we crown our kings, the place where we bury our kings, you know, like Edward the Confessor is buried in Westminster Abbey. You know, so you then say that we've taken this over. We've seized this most important cathedral, because that's what it is actually, isn't it? Westminster Abbey is actually like a cathedral. We've seized this most important religious building, which is, you know, the Queen is the head of the Church of England. This is the most important Church of England building in the country. We've seized it, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to hold on to it. And you could do the same at St Paul's and various other places. So, you know, and that would be less fraught than taking over the Tower of London.
Yeah, I think to start off with, initially, you know, it would have to be the majority on one place, one specific place, and then
absolutely.
and then after that, the rest of the country can open up. Yeah.
But if it could be organised,
yeah.
So that say you had 200 people who were going to go into Westminster Abbey, another 200 who were going to go into the White Tower, another 200 who were going to take over St Paul's, and you do them one at a time, because the minute you take over Westminster Abbey, every bloody policeman in his uncle is going to be outside Westminster Abbey, aren't they?
Yeah. Well,
so you then
the
go
trouble
and
with
take
that,
over the Tower of London.
Then
half those police would have to go back to the Tower of London.
Yeah. The trouble with that
nobody at all looking after St Paul's.
You'd have to limit. You'd have to limit the amount of press that you'd have there. You know, the news. So you'd have to like say, let's just start off with one particular place to begin with. Give it a few days, and then when people start, you know, seeing it on the news and in the papers, then that's the time then where you can go around the country and everybody else can do their own little thing.
Yeah, yeah. But you need to organise it so that everybody else was ready to do their own thing.
I don't think you'd have to, Albert. I think after a while people had cotton on to the fact of, knowing what to do, and they'll go out and do it.
You could put out on the internet, couldn't you? This is a basic survival pack if you're taking over your local, say, York Cathedral. Yeah? If you're going to take over York Cathedral, this is your basic survival pack for taking over York Cathedral. And you just put into it whatever it is that you need in there. So, I mean, it's
even just talking about this stuff, I think it'd be enough to disturb them.
I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would. I don't know if they can listen in on Skype. I don't know. They've got everything.
Yeah, they can listen to anything you speak. What goes down on open source, they've got a connection.
But you see, the thing is, what you'd have to do is it would have to come as a complete surprise, so you don't give them any idea when, where, why, or how. And what you do is you would, in order to organise it, you would say, right, well, we're going to have a conference, and we're going to meet up at this place, and then you arrange to meet somewhere, and everybody just troops off down the road, because everybody's expecting everything to be at that building. But you don't go into that building, although you may book it and say we're going to have a
decoy. Yeah, we'd have a decoy in place.
We don't go into that building. You then walk round the block, and you go and find another building, and you just say, look, we how much to take the building now? We want room for a conference, and you go in and just organise it. Well, you could even go down the local park, couldn't you, and all sit on the bloody grass and organise it. Once it's organised and you've got your team leaders, because that's the important thing, is that you get your team leaders together, and then each team leader would be responsible for selecting a small group to administrate his team and do whatever his team want to do. And then you would have an overall organising, controlling group of 2 or 3 people who would just pick up the phone one day and say, Harry's coming home. And everybody knows when they say Harry's coming home, you get the bloody bus to Westminster Abbey or the Tower of London or wherever it is you're going to go to.
Yeah, that'll be the one. You need a like a body sort of thing to give the command out, the call out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you do. Absolutely. And, if for example, a lot of people say, well, we should be talking to the military. Well, now, the military, obviously, very important. But if you're talking to the military, you also have to be extremely careful. Because if you attempt to dissuade the military from their duty, that's a major serious offence for which you go to prison for a long, long time. So what you would have to do is simply point out to the military what's going on in the country, point out to them that they took an oath to defend this country, that includes from enemies within, and that their loyalty must always be to serve the sovereign of this country.
Yeah.
Yeah? So you're not undermining the Queen at all. You're not trying to say, well, we're going to take over government. What we're saying is, we're not trying to destroy Parliament. We want to reinstate Parliament to what the Constitution says it should be.
Exactly.
And we don't want to harm the Queen. We want to give her back her full authority under the law as the Constitution says it should be.
Yeah. I'm quite prepared to spend as many months or years as it takes down in that place, I think it's more valuable than... I know it's a different circumstance, but what Julian Assange has done, staying in the embassy for this period of time, he's sacrificed a lot of other work he could have been doing, but obviously he was pinned in that position where he had many alternatives.
Well, if he comes out the embassy, he gets arrested, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So they're going to try and get as many, trumped up charges as they can to get these people out. That's the only.
And that is why. That is why, if you're going into somewhere like Westminster Abbey or the Tower of London, everybody has to be selected that they are not going to just think to themselves, whoopee, we're going to have some fun here, and why don't we just rip open Edward the Confessor's tomb and have a look at Edward the Confessor? Do you know what I mean? You cannot cause any damage whatsoever where you are going.
Yeah, it's not about that, yeah.
You know, it's not about causing damage. It's about taking something over.
Rectifying the Constitution.
And actually refusing admission to the authorities to come and chuck you out. And you know, they are not going to want to break or damage the doors of Westminster Abbey. They're not going to want to do that. They dare not break the windows of Westminster Abbey because they're irreplaceable. Do you know what I mean? So what are they going to do?
Mm.
You know, what are they going to do?
They'll get a few people, pay him to go around, smash a few windows, and blame you for it. That's what they'll do.
Well, they may well do that, but nevertheless, you're going to have lots of films in there, aren't you? You're going to have people with their cameras. They're going to be filming stuff. You can buy little video cameras, can't you, that directly upload straight to YouTube?
Yeah, your mobile phones can do it these days, Albert.
Well, absolutely, mine can't, because I'm not on the internet on my mobile phone. They keep trying to sell it to me, I keep telling them I don't want it. But, I mean, the phone would do it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's quite a technical phone, but all I want a mobile phone for is so I can talk to people when I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm never going to use the internet on a mobile phone, so why do I want to pay them an extra 20 quid a bloody month so that I can do it? You know, I mean, whereas people like my kids, they're on the internet, on their mobile phone, and they use it, you know, my daughter will use it as a sat-nav in her car, you know, my son walking down the road, he's doing his university work on it, you know, whatever it is he's doing with it. They do their shopping on the bloody thing. You know, I mean, I can't be dealing with all that shite. I'm not technical at all, so it's beyond me, and I've no intentions of learning. So all I want a mobile phone to do is to actually talk to people. But everybody and his uncle today, certainly everybody under the age of sort of 50, has got a mobile phone, and they're all on the internet. They all take video films, and they're all doing everything, and they're all uploading them left, right, and bloody centre. Yeah. You know.
So say Albert, if someone were to put this into place, at what point would you then be able to understand that you're actually getting somewhere? Where would you be able to like negotiate or communicate with the Queen or whoever it would be? At what point?
You would be getting somewhere the minute the national press started pushing it out.
But at what point would you know you've actually got somewhere?
Yeah, you see, the minute the national press started pushing it out, then the newspaper letters, columns, and all the rest of it would pull up, and people would be interviewed in the street. Or what do you think? What's going on at Westminster Abbey or Tower London? I think it's bloody brilliant. Way over time that we took this country back, you know. And that, in fact, is going to cause government major problems, because that is now a public declaration by the entire country virtually that they don't like government and they want the country back the way they want the country.
Yeah.
And government would then start getting cold feet because they are cowardly shites. And they will start getting cold feet. You've only got to look at bloody Cameron. He comes out and he says one thing, then he goes away and he does something else because somebody says boo to him.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have a backbone among them, so if they think we're going to drag them out kicking and screaming and hang off a lamppost, believe me, they're going to give you what you want.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get them to think that until you've got the entire country behind you. You can't get the country behind you because you're not getting the publicity. And what we need is something spectacular that's going to get the publicity.
It's just a combat on the treason that's going around.
Yeah. And I think that I don't know if you know, but in Northern Ireland, they took over the local town hall in Northern Ireland. Magna, I think it was, a place called Magna in Northern Ireland. They took it over. I've got a very, very good. She's actually English. I think she's a Yorkshire girl. But she's married to an Irish fellow. They live in Northern Ireland. She is exceptionally patriotic and very, very active in Northern Ireland. And I write letters for them, would say then send off. They send me and they say, well, this is what we want to say. Can you put it in words? And I say, yeah, of course. And I go and write them a nice letter. which they then distribute out in Northern Ireland. And they took over their local council, and when they had it all lined up, everything was organised, everything else, they told me what they were going to do, and I said, what you need to do is have somebody there who understands exactly what Article 61 of Magna Carta is all about. Take a copy of Magna Carta with you. As soon as the policeman walks through the door, you ask to see his boss. When you get his boss there, then you show him Magna Carta in a book of law. You show him exactly what it says in the book, and then you say, you know, we are doing this legally with the approval of the Barons Committee, so it's fully 100% legal. If you in fact attempt to obstruct us, then you're committing treason against the English Constitution.
Yeah.
And what happened, that's exactly what happened in Northern Ireland. And what did the police inspector do? He took his policeman away and said, no, you're perfectly lawful, you're doing what you're doing is perfectly legal, perfectly lawful. And he sent his policeman outside, and instead of trying to chuck him out of town hall, what his policemen were doing was keeping the traffic moving outside the town hall, because people were trying to stop and see what was going on. And of course that caused a major traffic jam. So his police officers were out there just keeping the flow of traffic going past the town hall. Nobody attempted to move them. They stayed there for several hours. And then because the night watchman came on duty and he needed to lock the building up, and he said to them, you know, I can sit here all night long. I've got to sit here anyway. I can sit here all night long and talk to you. And they said, no. As you've got to lock the building, we don't want you to get into trouble for failing to do your job. So we'll all go back, you know, round to Murphy's bloody pub or whatever it is, and we'll have a drink and we'll discuss it. And that's exactly what they did. But for several hours, the police stood outside, made no attempt to move them. Mm-hmm. And you need people who can talk to the police outside and say, this is the situation, you know, and your job in all of this is simply to prevent a breach of the peace, you know, and to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And, you know, if you're going to try and kick the doors down to this building, people are going to be, you know, stopping you opening the doors, so people are going to get hurt.
They're just there to facilitate, that's their duty.
What?
If the duty's not with what we're doing, then they're just there to facilitate.
Well, that's right. I mean, all they are there to do is to make sure that nobody gets hurt in the process, that no property is damaged in the process. And, you know, it doesn't matter if the chief constable comes along and says, you know, break the doors down, get in there, do whatever you like. If the local police on the ground have said no, and they are convinced that they're right to say no, and there are people there, and there are cameras there from the BBC, ITV, CNN, you know, Russia Today, and the cameras and all that are there, then what you do is you simply say, well, no, all these people are going to watch us breaking the doors out. They are going to see us destroying a national monument.
Yeah.
And we won't ever get away with that. So we're better off here to wait outside until they run out of food. Yeah. Well, once you've run out of food,
it's a big challenge for them, Albert. They're really going to have to, you know, work hard at this one. I mean, most things that they come across, they can get away with. But
you can operate on enough. You can carry enough chocolate bars and biscuits in with you to keep you going for 2 weeks. Westminster Abbey is going to have its own water supply. You can live for 4 weeks without food so long as you've got water. So there you are, you've got a 6 weeks occupation in Westminster Abbey. You know, if the word isn't out by then, it never is going to be, is it?
No.
Well, the thing is about it all is that you're not breaking any law.
No, you're not breaking the law, you're actually upholding the law.
Absolutely, and it's a form of redress, isn't it? Because I mean, that's what it is.
And what you do need people outside who are competent to actually talk to the police and the authorities and say, this is what is going on and this is how it's going on. But you see, the authorities don't know. I mean, I'm dealing at the moment with the Parliamentary Library, because there's a pair of women in the Parliamentary Library, Lucinda May and Una Gay, and they wrote a report on the royal prerogative. And the first thing that they said in their report was, it's very difficult to know the extent of the royal prerogative. Well, it's not difficult at all. It's perfectly clear. It's very sensible. Anything that the Queen does with the royal prerogative, which benefits the kingdom and its people, is perfectly legal, and she's fully entitled to do it. Anything that she does which harms even one of her subjects is highly illegal, and she's not entitled to do it. The royal prerogative can only ever be used for the good of the people. Therefore, you know, how is it difficult to understand it? These are the people in Parliament. When I started debating this with them, and I wrote them a 3-page letter with a series of points that I was making on this, and I got back a sort of standard half-a-page letter with the standard reply that they get their government ministers now operate the royal prerogative because, according to Lucinda May, or Lucinda Mayor, there is an ancient law that allows them to do it. And I said to her, well, I'd be very interested in seeing that ancient law. Can you produce the book that it's in? I would like to see it in an old ancient book. And they came back and they said to me, oh, well, this is the Bill of Rights of 1689. But if you read the Bill of Rights of 1689, it does not remove a single bit of authority from the king. What it does do is it simply restates the authority that the king has and what he cannot do and what he has never been able to do since Alfred the Great became King of England, or King of the English, and he set his own limits upon his royal authority. And every king that's come after has accepted those limits. And when we found a king like William Rufus or Edward II, who has not, or Charles I, who's not accepted that limitation on the authority, they've died. You know, they've been killed. William Rufus was narrowed through the heart while he was out hunting, put down as an accident, so he didn't have to kill anybody for it. Edward II with a red-hot poker up his backside, so he didn't show any injury. Charles I, well, we just chopped his bloody head off. You know, so it's very, very simple. And then they come back and they said to me, of course, when I queried that and said, well, thank you very much for the textbook answer, which of course is unadulterated shite, can you now tell me the answers to my questions? And they came back and said, well, we've only got a few books on the Constitution. So I said, well, okay, well, if you've only got a few books on the Constitution, it won't take you very long. Can I have a complete list of all of the books that you've got on the royal prerogative, that deal with the royal prerogative? You know, you've only got a few, it won't take you long. Can I have that? And what's more important, can I come down and actually see them? And they're considering that at the moment. Now, you and I know that when the parliamentary library tell you that they've only got a few books, what they're actually talking about is probably a few thousand. Yeah. You know, because the parliamentary library is going to be a huge great room with hundreds and hundreds of books shelves in it, with hundreds and hundreds of books on each shelf. Mm-hmm. You know.
It's like a few days, you know, when they brought the Magna Carta out, or the copy of the Magna Carta, should I say. I don't know if you actually watched it on the news that day, Albert.
No.
Well, I only just picked it up. I think it was a couple of days after.
I don't see any news. I haven't got a television.
Right. I thought. Well, there were some Facebook posts, which is where I, first discovered it. But I don't think there's that many people who actually know about the Magna Carta, and if they do, they don't understand what it's all about. So,
well, no, they don't. In fact, I was in Salisbury Cathedral a while back. I was doing a film outside Salisbury Cathedral, and then we went in to look around the cathedral where they had an original copy of Magna Carta. And there were a group of American tourists there, and they were all looking at it, and the woman who was talking about Magna Carta, it painted obvious, she hadn't got the faintest idea what she was talking about. And I said to her, can you tell me the origins of Magna Carta. And she said, oh yes, it was King John at Runnymede. And I said, no, that wasn't the origins, that was when he signed it. Can you give me the origin of Magna Carta? And she said, well, yes, it was at Runnymede. And I said, no, it wasn't at Runnymede. Runnymede, Magna Carta, is simply a copy. It's virtually a word-for-word identical copy of the Charter of Liberties of 1100. The Charter of Liberties of 1100 is basically a word-for-word copy of the laws of William I. William I accepted the laws of Edward the Confessor. So Magna Carta is the laws of Edward the Confessor.
Yeah.
And Edward the Confessor was using the law of King Alfred from when he first codified it. So Magna Carta is simply one of many reissues of the laws of Alfred the Great. You know, and she was sort of complete gobsmacked, because none of these people know anything about anything.
I think Andy's on his typewriter.
Oh, sorry. Is that coming through? Sorry, is that coming through, BJ?
Hey, it's alright. We know you're busy when you're doing that.
Well, I was just, I mean, I know of the Magna Carta, the 1215 Magna Carta. Now, it was in 1297, Albert. You know,
1297
is the statute
when Edward I invited the common man into Parliament because he wanted to raise taxes, and he thought that if the common man was invited in to discuss the taxes he wanted to raise, he'd be more likely to agree to them being set, you know. And at the same time, they made Magna Carta a statute law. Now, when Parliament today tell you, well, you know, of course we can repeal Magna Carta, that's because Parliament today are using Magna Carta 1297, which is what I think is about the 35th reissue of Magna Carta. The only issue of Magna Carta which is important, the only one which matters, is the 1215 Magna Carta. Yes, because the 1215 Magna Carta is actually an issue of Magna Carta which has been put there by a meeting of the Estates of England, because it wasn't just the barons and King John at Runnymede, it was everybody was at Runnymede, because when word got out, because what King John was doing, King John would take a good-looking, the wife of a good-looking wife of a baron, and force her into his bed. And of course she didn't want to be there, so she wasn't being very romantic and cooperative. Because, I mean, she was basically being raped by the king. And so she didn't want to know about that, so she wasn't helping them along the way. He would then go to court the next day and say, oh, Baron Snodgrass, I shagged his wife last night and she was a terrible fucking bugger, right? Well, of course she was. She didn't want to bloody well be there. So Baron Snodgrass wanted him dead. And as he was doing this on a regular basis with all the barons' wives, all the barons wanted him dead. Because he was suppressing the general population using foreign mercenaries, because our own people wouldn't suppress their own people, which I don't think they will today either. But because he was doing this, then in point of fact, the actual working man, the ordinary free man of England, wanted him dead. So when word got out that they were going to have a meeting between the barons and the king at Runnymede, all of the free men of England, for miles and miles around, and we're talking hundreds of miles around, grabbed up their bows and arrows and their broadswords, because they all had to have them, and they took them out the cupboard and they slung them over their shoulders and belted on the sword, and they trundled off to Runnymede. So that when King John got to Runnymede, there were the barons at Runnymede, which was a relatively small number of barons, so there were barons and bishops there. So we had the Lords Spiritual and the Lords Temporal, and then we had thousands upon thousands of the common men of England there. So that's known as a meeting of the Estates of England, which is the highest law-giving body ever. And Archbishop, what's his name? Can't think of his bloody name. He was forced on King John by the Pope, but he was an Englishman. He was very patriotic. He came across a Charter of Liberties, copy of the Charter of Liberties, which he then showed to the barons and said to them, look, I think this is really good law, don't you? And they all read the Charter of Liberties of 1100, otherwise known as the Marriage Charter, because he got married in 1100. So they all read that. They all came back to the king, and they all came back to the Archbishop and said, yes, absolutely bloody marvellous piece of law, we love it. And so they recopied it out. And like all things that you copy out, you put things in different order, don't you? And you think, oh, sorry, I've missed that, well, I'm going to put it in here. So it's slightly different order, but just about everything in the Charter of Liberties of 1100 is in Magna Carta 1215. That was then shown to the king. The king then signed it, and it was then reissued all over the country. And so that was an agreement between the king and the people. It wasn't new law, it was simply the king being forced to agree to maintain the existing law. So that was the situation. And so basically Magna Carta 1215 is the one which counts, because that was the contract that the king made with the people of England at the time. And of course the contract is not parliamentary legislation, is it? It's an agreement between the people of England and the King of England, and it's legally enforceable. And because it's legally enforceable, they wrote in the means of enforcing it into Article 61, which is by seizing the king's castles and other property. So, you know, to inconvenience the king and not returning them to him until such time as he had gone. Who has seen the film, what's it called? It's about Rochester Castle, the seizing and holding of Rochester Castle by Baron Aubrey. Iron something or other. Can't think of the title, but there's a very good film. It's out in DVD, so you should be able to find it on the internet and watch it. And it's about the seizure of Rochester Castle and the holding of Rochester Castle, which King John had under siege. And they held the castle just a few. In the film, it's just a handful of men held the castle. In real life, of course, it would have been several hundred men. Because you would have had the garrison as well as the barons' people, and they held the castle for weeks and weeks and weeks under siege until a relief column could be got over from France to relieve it. Shortly after that, King John ran away. Shortly after that, he lost his treasure in a bog. All the royal treasure was lost in a bog, so if you've got a good mind detective, you want to check out the route the king took. He then fell ill with pneumonia or something and he died. By which time, of course, England came back to Henry III, and then we came back to England again and refused all loyalty to the Pope. So, basically it's a brilliant film. There's a bit of artistic license in it, but it's basically historical fact.
So basically, when they keep mentioning the Magna Carta 1297,
yes,
it's just a load of nonsense.
It's just guff, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was put on as parliamentary legislation. And the thing with parliamentary legislation is no parliament can bind another. So, you know, the Parliament of 1298 could have cancelled and wiped out and just repealed completely Magna Carta 1297. But what they can't do is they can't touch Magna Carta 1215.
So would you say that could be sort of an act of treason doing that?
Well, it's not an act of treason as such. It's what it is it's the government looking for a way around it, because in 1217 there was another reissue of Magna Carta in the name of Henry III, who was a minor at the time, in which they left out Article 61. And of the other 35 editions of Magna Carta, each one that came through, each reissue of Magna Carta, left something out or altered something. But that was altered to suit the purposes of the king at the time. But the only Magna Carta which matters, the most important Magna Carta, the one which is the contract between the people and the king, is in fact Magna Carta 1215. And that can't be altered unless we, the people, alter it or the king alters it. And if the king alters it, he can't do that because it is a contract. We can't go to Queen Elizabeth and say, well, we want to change the terms of Magna Carta so that we can do this, that and the other, because she's going to say, absolutely not. If you want to change the terms, we have to sit down and negotiate it. Like any other contract, isn't it? You want to buy a house, and you go to your estate agents and the lawyers, and you negotiate the contract. Then you negotiate a price, what you're going to get for that price, and all the rest of it. How long it's going to take you to pay that house off. If 10 years down the line, your circumstances change, and you know that you can maybe not pay it off in the 10 years that you were going to pay it off in, so you then go back and say, well, I'd like to vary the terms of the contract to give me, so that I can pay it off in 20 years and not in the 15 that I've still got running. And they would have to agree to that. You'd have to negotiate with them and agree to it. And of course, before they would agree to it, they're going to say, well, okay, but that means the loan is going to go for longer, so we're going to increase the interest on that loan in order to cover the extra delay of getting our money back. So you're going to have to negotiate it every time, and that's exactly what would have to happen with Magna Carta 1215. We would have to sit down and we would have to negotiate it.
So what about for those people that find the Queen is as guilty as the rest?
Well, they're wrong. In fact, they are completely and utterly wrong, because
how are we going to get them on board, though, Albert? With that level of thinking, how are we going to get them on board with us and the idea that we have?
Well, we have to convince them differently, because one of the things that the Parliamentary Library put out is that the last time that the royal assent was personally given by a sovereign was in 1854 by Queen Victoria. So that means that where these people are saying, well, the Queen has given the assent to all of these bad laws that we know we've now got, well, she hasn't, because she hasn't given the assent to any laws since she came to the throne. They've all been given under what they call the automatic assent. Now, the automatic assent was brought in by King Henry VIII. He didn't want to sign the death warrant for his wife because he didn't want to be seen to be murdering his wife, because that wouldn't go down very well. So what he did was he said, okay, I don't want to sign this, so I'm going to get a party of 5 peers in, and he called in five barons and said, I want you to go away and look at this and sign the death warrant for it. Because Henry VIII was an obnoxious shite and a bully, and had they refused to do it, he would undoubtedly have found a way of removing their heads. So they went away and they dutifully signed the death warrant for his queen, who was dutifully executed. Parliament recently, fairly recently in fact, reinstituted that, and they all tell you now that they rule using Henry VIII's powers. Now they ignore completely the fact that Henry VIII's powers, because he was an arrogant bully, were illegal when Henry VIII used them. They are still illegal today. So basically, Parliament are ruling us illegally because they're claiming an authority they don't have, and they evidence that authority by saying that they could pass a law that all blue-eyed babies born in June, all blue-eyed baby boys born in June have to be killed. And that would be the law. So if you and your wife have a blue-eyed baby boy and it's born any time in June, the policeman's going to knock on your door and say, come on, give us your baby, to which, of course, you are going to hand over your child to be murdered quite happily, aren't you? You know, of course you're not. You're going to fucking argue about that, aren't you? You're going to end up in a fight with a policeman. Because you're in a fight with a policeman over this, and because everybody else in your family is going to think it's a good thing to fight about, is the police are going to end up with more policemen there, because you're going to get your entire family there. Before you know where you are, both sides of the street have come out, so you've got a major confrontation between the police and the general public over this. And the law could not be enforced. Added to which, of course, you've always got to find police officers prepared to enforce it in the first place. And I think that the majority of police officers in this country, given that order, would turn around and say to government, sod up, we're not doing it. So you're going to end up in a situation where a couple of dozen policemen in the country would obey the order, and the rest of the 180,000 policemen in the country are going to be siding with the general public and saying, no, we're not going to do it. So then the only thing the government can do then is pull out the army. Now, are the army really going to fire on the general public and the police force? Because that was what it would mean. And I don't think the army would do that. I think the army would say absolutely not, because we actually don't want to see baby boys with blue eyes born in June killed either. We don't want to see that. And we are most assuredly not prepared to spray a crowd of people where our own relatives and friends could be with bloody automatic weapon fire. You know, so I don't think the army would do it. So the whole thing becomes totally impossible to put into practice. So Parliament can pass the law, but nobody is going to obey it. Nobody. And so it becomes bad law. It is bad law anyway, but it's seen as bad law because it can't be applied. When people talk about, we have government by consent, and we have to consent to a law. That is, when they say consent, that is what sort of consent we're talking about. We're not talking about, do people think they should be able to drive without insuring their car? Because the vast majority of people in this country would tell you, no, they can't. They have to insure it, because if they run over my great Aunt Maud is entitled to compensation. If they have not got a car insured, and great Aunt Maud is going to need nursing for the rest of her life, and she's never ever going to get any compensation. So no, they've got to have insurance. The vast majority of people in this country would agree with that. The vast majority of people, if you said, well, great Aunt Maud has now reached the age of 70, so we're going to take her out and euthanise her to make room for the youngsters, the vast majority of people in this country would say, you can fuck off, we're not doing it. Do you know what I mean? And because of that, it becomes impossible to perform. And that is the type of consent that we're talking about. We're not talking about silly things like whether you're going to insure your car or whether you're going to pay your council tax. We're talking about people in this country are governed by the consent of the people, but that's not for the silly laws, that is for the major laws, where the people are actually going to come out and say, absolutely no way. And the entire population, not one or two people or a couple of dozen people, the entire population rises up and says, absolutely not, we're not doing that.
Makes you wonder why they mention so much crap in their manifestos then, doesn't it? Terrible.
Well, you're politicians, how do you know when a politician's lying to you when he's fucking talking to you?
They're doing stuff, they were doing stuff that was never even originally in the manifesto.
I know.
Yes, I know, but that's what I'm saying to you, see? How do you know a politician is lying to you when he's talking to you?
When they start
using, that's it.
When you see him do stuff. Who
was it? An American politician, I think maybe Nixon or somebody. He said to somebody, while I'm kissing your baby, I'm stealing their pocket money. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I'm a politician. While I'm kissing your baby, I'm stealing their pocket money. And it's true of politicians the world over.
You see, the problem is that, with the Queen, so sort of following up on what you've been saying, she doesn't make it very easy for herself if she has been, you know, taken
Well,
over.
yeah, but you see,
Why does she refer to Parliament as her government?
Does she not trust?
No, because you see,
I know
Does she not trust the people? In once we sort it out, we could actually, you know, give it back to her. Is that the case here, Albert?
well, I would never envisage taking it off of her. All I would envisage
not taking it off her, but
all I would envisage doing is sending her back to school to find out what it is to be an English king. That's all I would do. But I mean, basically, Cameron a little while ago turned around and announced publicly, and it was reported in the press, that the Queen is not allowed to go anywhere and not allowed to say anything unless he personally has approved it. Now, that means that the Queen has less freedom than you do.
Since when did the Parliament become sovereign?
Well, it never has. But they claim, no, you see, the Parliament claims sovereignty because they say the Bill of Rights transferred the authority of the Crown to them. but it never did.
I did come across that, Albert.
But you see, as I pointed out to the Ministry of the Parliamentary Librarian, as I pointed out to him when he wrote to me, that they were obviously unaware of the fact that King George III, who came a long time after the Bill of Rights, King George III actually had a 20-year running battle with Parliament as to where supreme authority lay, with him as the anointed King of England or with the House of Commons as the elected House. Now, if you ask your Member of Parliament, he'll say sovereignty lies with us because when you elect me as a Member of Parliament, you transfer your sovereignty to me.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Right, that's what he will tell you. You know your Member of Parliament. Would you transfer your sovereignty to him? I mean, the short answer is most people would say, sod off. No, not in a million years, right? When you get the Queen is crowned, or when Prince William is crowned, if somebody said, will you transfer your personal sovereignty to the King to look after? Most people would say, absolutely yes, right? However, Parliament claimed that the Bill of Rights transferred it to them. A long time after that, because we had George I, first of all we had William and Mary, who lasted quite a while. Then we had, Princess Queen Anne. And no, then we had, oh God, getting this all wrong now. We had William and Mary, George, then we had Queen Anne. Then we had George I, who didn't speak any English, George II, who did, George III, who did, right? So that we're talking at least 150 years probably after the Bill of Rights, George III. He had a 20-year running battle with Parliament as to where sovereignty lay. George III won the parliamentary vote. So it was announced as a parliamentary decision that sovereignty, ultimate sovereignty, lay with the King of England as the anointed sovereign, not the House of Commons. Now, I pointed this out to the House of Commons in my letter to them and said, you know, you obviously have not the faintest idea what you are talking about. So why don't you let me come along and talk to you about the Constitution? And they won't let me do it. Now, I mean, they're not doing it. But I've asked them a series of questions which they're treating as a freedom of information request, which I suppose at the moment is the best I get out of them. But, you know, it's really important that people know, and it's really important, therefore, that we find ways of actually waking the people up to what's going on. And as I say, taking over a royal park with medieval tents and medieval costumes and all the rest of it, you know, and actually having a few cattle delivered to the place, sheep and that can walk around and eat the grass, and when you want a nice meal you just spit roast a cow. Do you know what I mean? In exactly the same way that they did in medieval days. So you know, that would be newsworthy. People would watch that. People would want to know why it's happening. You can explain it. Take over the Tower of London or Westminster Abbey. People will want to know why it's going on. You get a chance to explain it. Once people wake up to the fact, then they will be on our side. I have no doubt whatsoever about that. You know, look at the number of people that you see in your everyday life who think that we should sling every Muslim out of the country because they are a clear and present danger to the welfare of our people. And, you know, the number is growing daily because what the Muslims are doing is not front page news when they go out and they rape somebody, but it is news and it is reported and people pick up on it.
Yeah.
Well, there's still a certain amount, a lot of education that needs to be done to people waking up to this, isn't there?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of education to be done. But, you know, if you went out and you booked the Royal Albert Hall and you announced you were having a conference and you can put 30,000 people in the Royal Albert Hall, you know, or Wembley Stadium, 30,000, like David Icke did, didn't he, book Wembley Stadium?
That's right.
And you get all these people there. The only people who are going to turn up are the activists. Because when David Icke had it, it was only the people who know about David Icke who went and bought tickets for it.
Yeah.
Because everybody else was thinking, who the hell is this David Icke fella? And nobody turns up for that. They carry on, they watch their EastEnders. Why do I want to go and see some town I've never heard of? Whereas the other people go along to see David Icke because he's got his own sort of following. I have to say I'm not one of his followers. I think the man's a raving bloody lunatic. But nevertheless, he has a following. He does attract a good following, and he can get and fill places like Westminster, you know, Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, you can't deny that, can you?
No, I mean, I have a following, but believe me, I don't honestly think I've got sufficient following to fill Wembley Stadium. You know, but David Icke did, and he spent 8 hours talking bollocks as far as I'm concerned. I saw a lot of what he said, and I didn't agree with a lot of it. But, you know, I mean, how can anybody with more than half a brain believe that the Queen is actually a green shape-shifting lizard from outer space? I mean, that's just so fucking way out over the top ludicrous. You know, anybody who says that she is has got to be certainly a prime candidate for sectioning under the Mental Health Act.
Yeah. Well, if you was to say that literally, then yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what he says literally, isn't it? That's what she is.
Yeah.
And it's like this international common law court thing that Kevin Annett does. Have you seen that? Have you followed that?
Yeah.
Well, he's accusing the Queen and Prince Philip in 1968 of going on a royal tour of Canada. It's their first trip to Canada since she became Queen. So, you know, the whole of Canada is out. This is a real novelty for the Canadians. They all want to see their Queen. So she goes to Canada with Prince Philip, handsome young couple, you know, obviously loved up to the eyebrows with one another, which I think they still are, to be honest. She's been in love with him since she was 13, I believe. But nevertheless, they're loved up to the plinth, handsome young couple, beautiful young queen, your handsome young prince, and they go to Canada, and whilst they're in Canada, they just happen to slip off, abduct 8 children, sexually abuse them, murder them, dispose of their bodies, and then slip back, and nobody sees that they were gone. Nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows what's happening. Well, which is fucking ludicrous, because when she leaves the country, she takes her own personal bodyguard from Scotland Yard, armed police officers. You'll guarantee that when she gets wherever she's going, MI6 are fully on the ground. You know, James Bond is every fucking where looking after her. When she goes to somewhere like Canada, then the Canadian government are going to supply their own close protection on top of the Scotland Yard close protection. Then they're going to surround wherever she is with uniformed Canadian mounted policemen, aren't they, with their nice red jackets and all the rest of it, and their big brimmed hats. And then you've got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people all sitting up all day and all night with a camera in the hope of catching a glimpse of her and actually getting a single picture. You know, how is she supposed to go away and kidnap, sexually abuse and murder and then dispose of the bodies of 8 separate children? It's just incredibly stupid to even contemplate that she could even get anywhere near doing that. You know?
I do know Philip. You know, he goes to a lot of indigenous tribes, and he's well loved and, you know, known over there.
Well, I'm sure that he is. But I sat down and I watched a lot of his interviews with these indigenous tribes people. Right? Now, I was a policeman, so I am trained. The government spent a lot of money training me on interview techniques and what to do and what to look for and all the rest of it, yeah? And so they spent a lot of money doing that. And I sit down and I watch the thing. And every single person, if you ever watch the interviews of these people, they are all exactly the same. They will all stop talking, look at the ceiling, marshal their thoughts, and then start talking again. Now, if you've been sexually abused, you don't need to stop and look at the ceiling and marshal your thoughts and think again, do you? That is something that's with you 24/7, every day of your life. You don't need to sit there and marshal your thoughts and actually worry about it. What they were doing, every last one of them in the interviews, I am totally convinced, was trying to memorise the lines they have been given and trying to remember them in the order they were given. But it's not just one or two, it's literally everybody that Kevin Annett has taken a statement of.
Well, as far as ESA spreads, Albert, I am aware of actually going forward, these lawyers looking at this stuff.
What about entertaining the thought that, okay, let's say it's ridiculous to even contemplate the thought that the Queen and her fellow could commit such crimes. Forget about that. What about her entourage? What about her entourage? She just don't go on her own.
No, she doesn't.
A lot of people with
No,
her.
she does. She
a lot
does.
of security.
She does. She takes a great many people with her.
So how about entertaining the thought that some of these people may be psychopathic, might be thinking they're above the law, Albert, because they do.
I'm absolutely convinced that that's a probability. It's a possibility. Not a probability, a possibility. Right? However, they are in the entourage of the greatest the greatest queen of the great. Well, she's not the greatest, is she? She is. They are in the entourage of the king of the greatest royal house in the history of the world. Everywhere she goes, everywhere they go, they are surrounded by close protection officers by the dozen from Scotland Yard. They are surrounded by spies from MI6 who are making sure nobody can get near her to get to the close protection officers. They're keeping everybody well back who's a risk to her. They are surrounded by close protection officers from the country which she is going to. They are surrounded by uniformed police officers and plainclothes police officers from that country, not by the hundred, but by the thousand. And then they are surrounded by thousands upon thousands upon thousands of the ordinary people of that country, all with a bloody camera, all wanting to take a picture of her or anybody that's anywhere connected to her. It's just not practical. It isn't. I mean, I know if you go to Buckingham Palace, probably 50% of the people on her staff, the men on her staff, probably 50%, if not more, are going to be homosexual. I know that. And I know that paedophiles are largely comprised of homosexuals, because the majority of children that are actually sexually abused today are young boys. And, you know, it's no good somebody saying like the homosexual things do. Oh, you know, you can't say that these are homosexual paedophiles because these are just paedophiles. They're not. They're not going out and abusing young girls. The vast majority are going out and abusing young boys. And so that makes them homosexual paedophiles. And so yes, I don't doubt that those people given a chance to slip off and abuse children or anybody else are going to go out and do it. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. But they're not going to do it on a royal tour, which is the major function in the country that she's attending. It is major. She doesn't go there every 6 months, she doesn't go there every year. Probably she goes to Canada every 6-7 years or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But nevertheless, when she goes there, it is a major occasion, and neither her nor any of her staff are going to be able to get away with it.
What's your thoughts on this satanic sort of like worship that's been approved? I don't know if you've heard about it.
Where's that?
Have you heard about it, Andy?
Whispers, I haven't read into it. It's a bit like the Kevin Emmett thing. I've heard of it and the stories, but Albert knows more.
Well, I came across it from UK Colin.
Oh, right.
Yeah, well, I don't know, you know, I'm a bit wary of the UK column now. Brian Garish used to be a very good friend of mine. I say used to be. Because he was pushing very heavily the Holly Greig stuff, wasn't he? And I looked at the Holly Greig case with the policeman's eye. And from what I can see of the Holly Greig case, there is insufficient evidence to bring any sort of prosecution against anybody.
Why have they banged him up though, Albert?
What?
Why have they banged him up? Why did they bang with Greig? What's his name?
Robert Greig.
Yes, why did they bang him up? I mean, why did
they banged him up? No. You see, what Brian Garish is saying is they're banging him up to shut him up. They're not. What happened was Robert Greene was going up because he put this Holly Greig story hook, line and sinker. He bought it hook, line and sinker. And he's gone up to Scotland and he's been handing out leaflets which is naming 24 people as paedophiles on no more evidence than the fact that Anne Greig has told him they are. Right? There is no
who with the right mind would do that?
What?
Who in the right mind would do that?
Well, Robert Greene did that. Right? Now, Brian Garish is supporting Robert Greene.
And none of them have got anything to support their own claims?
Well, no, there isn't. For example, one of the things that they claim is that Holly Greig's uncle caught her father having sex with her. And he is then reputed to have said that he would, if he didn't stop, then he would report them to the police, right? This is what we're told. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never met any man, if he walked in and saw his wife's husband having sex with his wife's daughter, his niece, wouldn't kick the husband all the way round to the nearest fucking police station. I don't know anybody who wouldn't do it. At least give him a fucking good belting, right?
Yeah, true, sir.
I don't know anybody who wouldn't do that. So basically, that in itself is improbable, that he would simply warn him.
Well,
unless there's a bigger secret involved and it's used as, you know, some sort of blackmail.
Okay. So anyway, so basically, I don't know anybody who wouldn't do that. We're then told that the paedophiles, told by the father, have abducted the brother, poured alcohol down his throat when he didn't drink, hit him on the head with a blunt instrument and put him in a cart and set fire to him. Now, as I said to Brian Garish on many occasions, Brian, the world is full of alcoholics and drug addicts whose families don't know about it because they get very, very good at hiding it. And that's true.
I'll support that, yeah, I'll support that.
Right? Absolutely. Now, you're saying that they poured alcohol down his throat and he didn't drink. You don't know he didn't drink. All you can say is we don't think he drank.
Yeah.
You can't give it as a definite fact.
Yeah.
Right? You're then saying he was hit on the head with a blunt instrument and put into a car which was set on fire. But you can't say that either. Because although he had an injury consistent with a blunt instrument injury, blunt trauma injury, it is a fact, it is a scientific, provable 100 times over, that if you subject the skull to intense heat, it will fracture in exactly the same way as it does for blunt trauma injury. Now, if you Google this, heat fractures to the skull, consistent with blunt trauma injury, you will get an awful lot of stuff up. Just Google it and see. I know about it because when I was policing, I thought, well, I need to look at I need to know what I'm looking at when I look at it. So I went out and I got a book, quite a horrible book actually, on forensic pathology. And I sat down and I read it, and it told me this. What it said was that the similarities between heat-induced fractures and blunt trauma fractures are so close that it takes a highly skilled forensic pathologist to tell them apart. Your local hospital pathologist is unlikely to be able to spot the difference. Right? However, what do we know? We know he was found in a burnt-out car, don't we?
Yeah.
We know he was dead and he was in a burnt-out car. Now, petrol does not burn at that higher temperature. However, petrol is a very good accelerant, and when the tank explodes, it will set fire to everything in the car. And what it does is it sets fire to the foam rubber seats and all of the plastic in the car. Now, plastic and foam rubber burn at a temperature in excess of 2000 degrees centigrade. Now, that is fucking hot. How do I know that? When I was serving with the Navy, I did a course as part of my Chief Petty Officer's training on firefighting. So I'm a fully qualified fireman. That's how I know that. And, you know, I know how to deal with it. So I know that you're sat in a car on a foam rubber seat with plastic dashboards and panels and the side panels in your door, all plastic, all burning at 2000 degrees centigrade. You are in a bloody oven. And your skull is going to fracture. Now, I explained all of this to Brian Garish, all of which he turns around and says is rubbish.
Well,
and he supports Robert Greene going up to Scotland. Now, Robert Greene went up to Scotland, he handed out leaflets, he was doing talks naming 24 people as paedophiles and claiming that the procurator up there, Angelino, whatever her name was in fact covering up the paedophiles. There is no evidence she was covering up at all. She looked at the file, she decided there was insufficient evidence to bring a prosecution. Right? Brian Garish says that the police report from the inspector who interviewed Holly said that she doesn't know how to lie. I believe what his report was, that she doesn't know the truth. You can't tell the difference between a lie and the truth. Mm. Now, so there are so many things wrong with the Holly.
What did they, what was the charge for banging him up?
What did they arrest him? Well, the 24 people who were being accused of being paedophiles went to court, and they went for an injunction. Up in Scotland they call it an interdict, right? They applied to the Scottish courts for an interdict, which is an injunction to prevent Robert Greene going up to Scotland telling everybody that they are paedophiles. Because, as they quite rightly pointed out to the court, there are a lot of silly people up there who will just react to what they see and what they hear, and they were concerned that people would just throw petrol bombs through their house windows late at night, and their own wives and children would be subject to being burnt to death. So the courts ordered the interdict, they issued the interdict against Robert Greig. Robert Greig then went back up to Scotland and came out of his lodging house with his bag with all the leaflets in it, was accosted by two plainclothes police officers who identified themselves as plainclothes police officers, asked him to identify himself. Once he'd identified himself as Robert Greig, they arrested him to prevent a breach of the peace under Scottish common law. Now, they then took him to the police station. Now, Brian Gary said that the arrest was illegal because they didn't serve the interdict on him until he'd been at the police station. Well, of course, they hadn't served it because he'd been down in England, and it's a Scottish interdict. When he got to the police station, they served the interdict on him. But he wasn't arrested on the interdict. He was arrested to prevent a breach of the peace before he actually told anybody else that these 24 people were paedophiles. When he went to court, he was sentenced to 9 months for the breach of the peace. Now you might think, well, 9 months is a long time for a breach of the peace.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not. Not when you consider that there was a possibility that a rogue element of the Scottish population could have gone out and petrol bombed 24 people's
Yeah,
houses.
but that's not the breach of the peace, though.
What?
That's not the breach of the peace, though, is it?
Yes, it is.
So in my view, it's like you saying to me, Albert, you're not allowed to go to that shop across road, right? And then, you know, I might be outside my door, I'm not even thinking about crossing road, but you've just come along because you've seen me stood outside my door and you've arrested me to prevent me from crossing that road, even though you've already...
No, that's not the same.
Is it not the same?
Scottish law on breach of the peace, like so many other things, is different to English law. In England, firstly, I as a police officer would never arrest anybody for breach of the peace, because it's my primary duty is to prevent breaches of the peace. So if I arrest somebody for a breach of the peace, I've failed in my primary duty. So I will look for a public order offence that I can arrest you for, right?
Yeah.
Because if I fail in my primary duty to prevent a breach of the peace, that constitutes a neglect of duty under the police discipline codes, and I get it in the neck for arresting you for a breach of the peace, which I was there to prevent in the first place, right? For not doing my job. Now, in Scotland, in order to get arrested for a breach of the peace, you only have to be guilty of annoying somebody. And this is the point. You see, Scottish law is different to ours. You cannot think, well, I live in England and breach of the peace says this, therefore it's wrong for them to do it in Scotland. Scottish law is different. Now, if somebody's going around saying, say somebody came along and said, oh, you know, PJ there, he's a paedophile, right? So that would piss you off, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, it would. So you would be annoyed. In England, I can't arrest them for breach of the peace for saying that. So what I would arrest them for is Section 4 of the Public Order Act for causing you fear, alarm and distress by what I was saying, right?
Yeah.
By what they were saying. So that's what I would arrest you for in England. In Scotland, he's been up there and he's told half the population of bloody Glasgow that these 24 people are paedophiles.
My thing with this injunction is it doesn't serve a purpose. It's pretty much almost pointless.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you're not, you see, that most people, when they get an injunction against them, most people comply with it. Robert Greig didn't comply with the injunction. Had he gone up to Scotland just to have a weekend fishing up on one of the locks up there, he would not have got arrested. He didn't do that. He went up there to a planned meeting to talk to hundreds of people about the fact that there were these 24 paedophiles running free because the Procurator Fiscal refused to prosecute them because she's covering up for a senior judge and for the local police superintendent and the brazen.
Right.
So,
based on that information and an injunction already in place, then I support that. Yeah. If that is the case, then I support that.
Right. So basically, he's gone up there. The people up there that he's accusing of being paedophiles, all 24 of them went to court and put the case together that they were petrified that their houses were going to get petrol bombed. Now, that's not an unreasonable belief when you understand that down in England, a female paediatrician put a brass plate outside her door with her name on it, stating she was a paediatrician, and somebody petrol bombed her house because they couldn't tell the difference between paediatrician and paedophile.
Well, need your semo, Albert, need your semo.
You know what I mean? So basically, I mean, people are remarkably stupid on occasions, and because of that, you know, the courts issued the injunction. Now, according to Brian Garish and everybody else on his team, Robert Greene was illegally arrested because they hadn't served the interdict on him until he was at the police station, and he was arrested before he got to the police station. He was arrested before he got to the police station. He was arrested before he got the interdict served on him. But he wasn't arrested on the interdict, he was arrested under Scottish common law. He was dealt with under Scottish common law. And when you work out that 24 families could easily have found themselves burnt to death over what Robert Greene was doing, because their houses had been petrol bombed in the dead of night, when you work that out, 9 months is not long enough, really, is it?
No, so
you know,
what's the plan in place? Do you know how they're gonna, you know, deal with it after?
Well, you don't know. But you see, the point is, when I pointed all this out to Brian Garish, and I was asked at a conference what I thought about the case, and I said at the conference, actually a British Constitution Group conference in Bournemouth, and I was asked what I thought about the case, and I said, well, what I'll do my talk, and any time I've got left over, what I will do is I will then talk about, I will then try and answer as many questions as I can in the time I've got left. And they said, okay. So I dealt with the Holly Greig case in the conference. Brian Garish went fucking ballistic. He was extraordinarily obnoxious to me. And we were supposed to be friends. And he was extraordinarily obnoxious to me. And so in the end I said to Brian, look Brian, as far as I'm concerned, you're dead and you're going to stay dead. Then he set a man called Steve Hamilton onto me. Now Steve Hamilton's only a little bloke and he's completely fucking obnoxious. He was very, very abusive over the internet to me for several weeks, and eventually I said to him, look, fuck off before I pop you into the ground like a tin tap. Then he went. Then I had emails from Anne Greig telling me that she'd heard I was armchair analysing her daughter's case, and that she was talking to her lawyers about it, and that if I didn't stop talking about it, she would sue me. So I said to her, Anne, you need a new circle of friends. Right? So what I said to her, I then got another email back telling me that she was going to sue me. So I said to her, Anne, you're a big girl now. Big girl has to do what a big girl has to do. Go ahead and do it. That's the last I heard of it. Because they know damn well they can't sue me and win, because they know damn well that they are pushing, barrow shite uphill, and it's going to come out the barrow and it's going to bury them alive. But it is complete shite. On a television show by Theo Chalmers, one of the things they said was that Holly Greig was petrified, and she didn't say anything because her dad told her that if she said anything about the abuse that was being done to her, he would kill her dog. And Theo Chalmers said to her on air, live on air, Theo Chalmers said to her, and I was watching the programme, he said to her, do you believe that your father would have killed your dog if you'd said anything? And she said no. And Theo Chalmers virtually fell out of his chair. You could see the shock horror stunned on his face. And then Anne Greig jumped in and said, oh, she misunderstood the question. But it was a perfectly plain, easy to understand question, and she answered it perfectly civilised, in a perfectly simple way, and in a logical way. No, she did not believe her father would have killed her dog. So Theo Chalmers came back and said, so are you telling me that you don't believe that had you said anything, your father would have killed your dog? And she said, no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't have killed my dog. We're told, aren't we, that Anne Greig says that her husband and her son ran off to Portugal afterwards. So they were out of the reach of the police. What she doesn't tell you is that her husband and son came back to Scotland, were interviewed by the police, who decided there was no case to answer. What she also doesn't tell you is that before he gave her a good kicking and she ran off down to England with Holly, that she and her husband were buying a house in Portugal, and that the only thing that her husband did, minus his wife and his daughter, was because he'd already bought the fucking house in Portugal and planned to go to Portugal to live, the only thing he did was took his son, who was still with him, to Portugal. Whereas Greig tells you he went to Portugal, Brian Gerrish tells you he went to Portugal because Portugal is a great place for paedophiles. You're not getting all the story, are you?
I don't know if PJ's still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still listening.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on the whole institutional paedophilia?
I think that there is institutionalised paedophilia that's been allowed to run riot in this country. My personal feeling is that I think every police officer who has covered up the paedophilia, we should take him out, we should fucking publicly flog the bastard, and then we should hang him. Because as a result of his not doing the job that he took an oath to do, which is to uphold the law of this country and protect these children, a lot of children have suffered a great deal over many years, and will continue to suffer until they die, I have no doubt, when it was completely avoidable. After the first 2 or 3 came to know, they should have dealt with it then.
So
and it can be dealt with.
A government inquiry is not enough, is it?
No, a government inquiry is not enough, because government inquiries invariably come down on the side of government, and that is, let's make everything hunky-dory, chaps, yeah? So when was the last time you saw a government inquiry which actually came along and resulted in somebody being sent to prison?
Never, I don't think.
Never, never. So what it needs to do is they need to select a select group of police officers who are 110% straight as a bloody die, and they ought to say to them, right, you are going to take this over, you are going to review all of these cases, you are not only going to look at the members of parliament and the prominent people like the Jimmy Saviles of this world and what they have done, but you are also going to look at the police officers who dealt with this at the scene and at the time. And you're going to bring charges against each of those police officers, right? And they are going to prison, and they are going to lose their pension because they've not done the job we paid them for. So they're not entitled to it. Now, I was stopped on the beat one day by some women, and they said to me, "Oh, Albert, we're very concerned that we like you, so we wouldn't tell anybody else this, but we're telling you. We're very concerned about the number 9 and number 16. Well, what's the problem with it?" So she said, "Well, a lot of kids are going in there, young kids, very small kids, and they're all coming out with bags of sweets and small toys and money." So I said, "Okay, well, leave it with me and I'll see what I can do." I went and had a word with a friend of mine who was Andy, who was on the vice squad, very good policeman. And I said to him, "Andy," I said, "can you have a look at this for me?" 2 weeks later, they kicked the man's door in and they arrested him. He was charged with being an active paedophile, and he was sent to prison for 3 years. Right? It took 2 weeks to take a paedophile off the ground from the time that I was stopped in the street to the time that he was arrested. Yeah? We've had police officers who have known since 1980 that prominent people in this country have been sexually abusing children consistently since 1980, and fuck all has been done about it. Right? Why? And I'll tell you something else. My ex-wife phoned me up and she said to me one day, she said, Peter's very upset, that's my youngest son. Or was my youngest son, I've had 2 more since then. And I said, "Oh really, what about?" He said, "Well, the guy that picks him up to take him to the football club is saying things about to Peter about his sister and her boyfriend." Well, his sister didn't have a boyfriend, of a sexual nature, which is upsetting Peter a great deal. So I said, "Okay, I'll come round and have a word with him." So I went round and said, "Come on, Pete, what's it all about?" So he told me. And I said, "Is anybody else in the car?" And they said, yes. And I said, well, who was in the car? And he said, well, it's my friends, you know, whatever their names were, I can't remember now. And I said, well, come on, let's go and find them. So we walked off down the road and we find a friend, and I'd say to Peter, you wait over there, and I'd say to the little kiddie, I said, look, I'm Peter's dad, but I'm also a policeman. Can you tell me what's going on in the car, what's being said to Peter in the car? And they all told me the same thing. So I told all them the same thing. I want you to go home now, straight home. I want you to find your mum. I want you to tell your mum that I've spoken to you, and that another policeman will come to talk to you, and he will have to talk to you with your mum present. So that's what happened. So I then went back to my ex-wife's house, and I phoned up the local police station, and they said to me, there's no offences. So I said, well, until you get round here, you won't know, will you? And so they said, okay, we'll send someone round. 2 hours later, nobody arrived, so I phoned them up again, and they said, right, they said, we discussed it, decided there's no offences, so there's no point in sending anybody, so we haven't. So I said, if I haven't got a man with a blue pointed hat stood in front of me in 5 minutes flat, my next phone call was going to be at the police department at Scotland Yard. Well, the area car came round the corner with the blues and twos going on 2 wheels. Two very officious policemen got out, and in the Metropolitan Police, if a child comes to the attention of the police, you fill in what they call a Form 78. If he's helped an old lady, then he gets an invite to the police station, a ride in a police car, and a guided tour of the police station, maybe get a policeman's hat as a present, right? If he's stolen something, well, that goes through youth and community and social service and everybody else, right? But there's this Form 78 you always fill in every time a child comes to your attention. So these two very officious policemen came there, and they sat there, and they said to me, they listened, and then they said, there's no offences. I said, and they said, there's nothing we can do. So I said, you're absolutely certain there's nothing you can do? They said, no, there's absolutely nothing that we can do. And I said to them, you're certain? It's impossible, you can't do anything at all. And he said, no, nothing at all we can do. And I said to him, very quietly, I said, what about a Form 78 on the youth club? And he looked at me, and then you could see recognition coming into his face. He's a policeman. And I said to him, yes, you're absolutely right, I am John. Now, I don't care whether you investigate this or whether I do. I'm giving you the opportunity to investigate it because it's on your ground. However, it will be investigated. And I can tell you now that if I investigate it, there's going to be a bigger bloody bang at West Hampstead Police Station than there ever fucking was at Hiroshima. Right? They went away. They then investigated it. Fortunately, he was only in the process, early stages of grooming my son. He had already committed 2 serious sexual assaults on 2 of the other children, for which he was sent to prison at Southwark Crown Court for a number of years. So basically, I cannot understand how policemen can sit back and know that these things are going on and actually look the other way. I can't. And I never would do that myself.
But they obviously do, don't they?
Well, they obviously did, and that's what I'm saying. I've written to the Commissioner of Police, and I've said, when you are investigating these allegations, I would also like you to investigate the actions of the officers involved at the time, with a view to prosecuting them for being accessories before, during, and after the fact, which is treated as though you committed the crime yourself.
But no one's budging, however, are they?
No.
No, of course not, because these people think that they are in a world of their own and they can do what they like. They have been allowed to get away with it for so long that it is untrue. There is no such thing in today's police force as a police officer with the moral courage to do what is right, no matter what the hell, is going to happen about it to them.
Well, they've obviously, what about the dirt? What about the dirt currency? Do you think that plays a large part?
The what?
dirt currency.
What's that when it's around?
Well, say you're a dodgy policeman, and you make a dodgy policeman, right?
Yeah.
And say you've gone out in the van, I don't know, on the street, pick up, youths who get too drunk or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And you pull a couple of them in, you throw them in the back of the van, yeah?
Yeah.
The new recruit's in there, and you turn around and you say, the two dodgy policemen say, give him a ticket.
Yeah.
And he turned around and said, well, he ain't done nothing wrong. I said, give him a ticket.
Yeah.
And the young recruit dutifully obliged. Now, them two coppers have got dirt on them, haven't they?
Yeah.
That's what I mean by dirt currency.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that possibly does happen. It would never happen with me, and I'll give you an example. I was out with a young policeman one day, and we stopped cars which were turning left where they shouldn't. And we stopped this car, he stopped this car with two cracking, beautifully good-looking women in it. And the passenger leaned across and said, oh, I'm very sorry, officer, my friend here doesn't know the area, she's given me a lift home. I told her to turn up here, so if you'd like to jump in the back of the car with me, I'll make it up to you. Right? He said, no, he said, that's perfectly okay, madam, I'm not going to do that, but I would like you to pay attention to the road signs in future. So drive safely, off you go. At which point, she put her hand in her bag and pulled out a warrant card. She was a detective inspector, and the driver of the car was a detective sergeant in one area complaints department. And she said, thank you very much, officer. Had you got in the back of the car, you and your colleague would have been arrested. And once the car had driven off, he turned around and said to me, he said, Albert, he said, I'm not fucking glad I was working with you tonight. And I said, why is that? And he said, because if I'd been working with anybody else, I'd have got in the car. But I knew you wouldn't let me. I knew you would not let me. Right? So basically, it doesn't matter what your rank in the police force is, as long as you draw a line in the sand and you say, beyond that line you cannot go. It doesn't matter if the man is a superintendent or a chief superintendent or a commissioner or chief constable of police. It doesn't matter. If you've drawn that line in the sand and you say beyond that and you're going to get nicked, they won't go beyond it. And the trouble is, you see, there are not enough policemen today who are prepared to draw the line in the sand and say, step over that sunshine and you're going down.
Do you know what one said to me one day?
What?
He said, I've got a mortgage to pay like anybody else.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. I just walked away.
Yeah. Well, that, he has got a mortgage to pay. I had a bloody mortgage to pay.
Yeah, but doesn't understand. It doesn't.
But the fact of the matter is, you're not going to get your mortgage paid, are you, by being sent to prison for 10 years for corruption? Do you know what I mean? So why be corrupt?
Yeah.
Why be corrupt?
Well, if it becomes the norm.
Well, it is fast becoming the norm. I mean,
now you've got a problem, haven't you?
Yeah, of course you have. But I mean, I stopped cars with crackingly good-looking women in it who are pissed out of their brains, who rather than get arrested, offer you their bodies. And I've always arrested them for drink drive. I've never ever even contemplated accepting the offer, and it didn't matter what they looked like, and some of them were stunning, yeah? I would arrest them, because I wasn't prepared to be corrupt. And in fact, I told the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police of Port Condom, who came down to my police station one day for a meeting, and he was asked, why do we have this 10-year rule where you do 10 years in a job, and you can actually, you then get transferred out of that job into another job. No matter how good you are at the job you're being transferred out of. In fact, the officer who asked the question was an officer who's highly skilled in dissecting computer hard drives for paedophilia and bank fraud and all that sort of stuff, right? So, he's a highly skilled police officer in this field. You can't afford just to take him off and put him out directing traffic, because there's nobody else who's as skilled as he is to do the job he's doing. And Paul Condon said, well, we do this because if after you've been in the job for 10 years, you become corrupt. And I said to Paul Condon, I'm not having that. And he said to me, what? I said, I'm not having that. If an officer is corrupt, he was corrupt on the day that he joined the police service. And it is a failure of the vetting system to pick up his corruption. If he is not corrupt, there is nothing you can offer that officer which will make him corrupt. I said, now, for example, you could offer me my very own tropical island, full up with dark-skinned, dusky maidens with big knockers. You could offer me all the money I could even contemplate ever having. You could give me the most luxurious cars on that island for me to drive around in.
Is this what's
seriously?
Albert, is this what ACPO's involved in at the minute?
What?
Is this what ACPO deals with?
This is who?
ACPO, ACPO.
Oh, he was, yeah, all senior policemen are. And I said, you could give me my pair of, a really superb yachts in the harbour for me to go sailing on, and my own personal private Learjet with my own personal private pilot, and all it will get you is your collar belt for trying to bribe me, right?
Yeah.
And he sort of looked at me, and when he left the room, he turned around and he said, I don't know who that fucking inspector is, but he's not allowed to be ever to talk to me again. And 3 months later, he had to pin a medal on me, and he hated every second of it, so I milked it for all it was worth. I did.
Yeah, the thing is, you were not only, in that case, you were not only a good police constable, but also, when you said the scenario about the girl saying, well, don't book me, don't nick me because I'm drink driving, jump in the back, you also knew that you could have been set up.
I could have been being set up.
And I think that's what happens a lot.
Of course it does. That's what the detective inspector was doing with my mate, trying to set him up. Yeah. He was trying to set him up.
So really, it doesn't pay, does it, at all?
It is the height of stupidity to do anything which is corrupt. It is the height of stupidity. You might get away with it this week, you might get away with it next week, but the week after they're going to feel you collar for it. So it's the height of stupidity.
Well, like I say, but the trouble is, if it becomes the norm, then there's a big problem, isn't there? I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying if.
Well, when you look at, there is a list on the internet, isn't there, of 400 police officers who've been arrested and sent to prison over a 4-year period. Yeah?
Yeah.
And everybody's saying, this is terrible.
Yeah, it's the blue-eyed boy born in June, isn't it? It goes back to that.
One police officer being sent to prison for corruption is terrible. Yeah? For even one to be sent to prison is terrible. For even one to be sacked for corruption is terrible. However, when you look at it within the scale of things, there are 100 police officers every year who are convicted of criminal offences throughout the country. Yeah? 100 police officers. There are, every single year, 180,000 police officers. So 100 is just a drop in the ocean, isn't it? Now,
but they're the ones who get caught, Albert.
Well, yes, I know they get caught. So let's say that they are the 100 out of the 300 who get caught. 300 corrupt police officers out of 180,000 is still a drop in the ocean. And for every one of those police officers who gets caught, he is caught, he is arrested, the case is put together by another police officer who is not corrupt. But nobody thinks about that other policeman who's doing all the work and actually locking up a former colleague of his, is there? Nobody thinks about the fact that
it's the same as the attack on NHS. It's the same with the police and all the others. It's all, it all has a knock-on effect on the ones that are actually doing the job correctly.
Well, absolutely, but it's a very unfair knock-on effect.
Yeah.
And what's happening now is that the police are very disheartened, anyway. They're really disheartened, the police. The morale in the police force is lower than the bloody, you know, bottom of Lake Loch Ness. Yeah? And the reason it is lower is twofold. Firstly, government have fucked up the way they can do the job, put so many restrictions on what they can do and how they can do it that they're physically not able to do the job properly anymore. And that's very frustrating for them. And secondly, they are getting blamed by an increasing number of the public, you know, number of people in the public, you know. And when you get policemen stop a car, for example, and promptly find himself looking down at a video camera, you know, and getting very brusque questions thrown at him all the time before he's had a chance to say a bloody word, that gets very annoying. And, you know, what appalls me about it is not the fact that it's happening, although that is bad, but that it's happening and the police officers do not seem to know how much authority they have to actually combat that. But they have a lot of authority to combat that. But they don't know it. And this is what I find is about these videos you see on YouTube. It's the fact that police officers are obviously unaware of A, the law, and B, the authority that the law gives them. Otherwise, these people would not get away with being so fucking obnoxious as they are to police.
Yeah. Well, this is the way I'm going to look at a police officer from now on, Albert. Is this officer just going to pay his mortgage, or does he actually intend to still stay living at home?
Well, you see, the fact is he can want to pay his mortgage, and he can still do the job properly.
Yeah.
You know, the fact is, you know, but.
Well, that'd be the officer that would intend to want to still stay living at home.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, the fact of the matter is that, you know, when you get like a friend of mine many years ago was a police officer, and he saw his father's car parked on a double yellow line in Kilburn Road, and so he gave his father a parking ticket, and his father looked at the officer's name on the parking ticket, saw he'd been given a parking ticket by his own son. Because when his son came home from work that night, all his fucking bags were packed and on the steps. And he had nowhere to live. Instant. You know, but people look at that and they think, well, you know, is he a good policeman? Is he a fucking idiot? I had another policeman when I was at King's Cross. He had just got married. He had come back off of his honeymoon. Right? He'd come back off his honeymoon. And he went into a pub after work. Him and another policeman picked up two girls. They went back to one of the girls' flats. One of the girls produced a tin for roll-ups and started to proceed to roll them up some joints. At which point he then arrested her for possession with intent to supply. Yeah?
Yeah.
When he got down the police station, and the sergeant took him on one side, and he said to him, he said, what sort of a fucking moron are you? And he said, what? He said, I'm chucking the girls out. And he said, what do you mean you're chucking them out? I've arrested them. He said, I don't care what you've done, I'm letting them go. I'm partly doing that because you were a prat, because you're not supposed to go into somebody's house and then arrest them like that. What you're supposed to do is simply put a note into the collator. That's what the training tells you. Pick it up, right? Yeah. The other thing is, how the fuck do you hope to stay married for more than 4 weeks when your wife finds out that you picked up another bird and gone back to her place 2 weeks after you come back, after you married her? You know, I'm saving your money. The world is full of fucking stupid policemen. And isn't that just the height of stupidity? That the world is full of stupid policemen. But it's also full of policemen who don't understand the law, they don't understand how bad a week it is when it comes to the law.
Stupid policemen, therefore, Albert, stupid police Therefore, stupid policemen can only ever be capable of catching stupid criminals.
Well, they're not even capable of that, are they? Do you know what I mean? They're not even capable.
They might be able to catch themselves.
Even more stupider. Sorry.
Yeah, you know, they're not even capable of that. But if you look at some of these examples, I mean, there's a classic example, wasn't there? Two police officers stopped a kid on a pedal cycle. Now, I've no idea why they stopped him, but the guy came out of his house, he's in his garden, he's got his video camera and he's videoing it from across the road. Police officers come over, order him to turn the video off, and he said, no, I'm in my own garden, I'm filming in my own garden, nothing you can do about it, it's perfectly legal.
I think I know which one you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't turn the video off, I'm going to arrest you, right? What offences have I committed? So the policeman obviously doesn't know what offences he's committed, yeah? So he gets on to his control room.
Yeah.
And the control room obviously tell him, well, he's not committing an offence, so fuck off and leave him alone, right?
Is that the video where his colleague, his female colleague's trying to, like, you know...
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I mean, but didn't that man come across as a complete, utter, total fucking idiot?
Yeah, he did make pretty much a fool of himself and the police
Yeah.
force. To
Absolutely,
an extent, yeah.
absolutely. And that sort of thing, it gives me the screaming fucking abdabs, I'll tell you. Because I don't know. I mean, I was trained by the Metropolitan Police in 1986. And I worked with a very good lot of police officers. And they were all honest, they were all fucking good. We had the occasional stupid one, like the twat who got married, then pulled a bird 2 weeks later. You know. But basically, they were honest and they were good, yeah. And none of these things that you see on YouTube today would have been done by any of those police officers. None of them, because they knew what policing was about. You know, they knew what it was about, and they were good at the job that they did. You know, they were good at the job they did. And the people in the area were getting well policed, well served and everything else. Nowadays, you know, you phone for a policeman because you've come home from the theatre with your wife and you find you've been burgled. You phone for a policeman, you're lucky if you see a policeman in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, we would aim to get a policeman when I was policing, we would aim to answer your call within 30 seconds when you phone the police station. We would aim to answer your call within 30 seconds and get a police officer with you within 15 minutes. And if we failed to do that, if we took 25 minutes to get there, my chief superintendent would have you up on the card to want to know why the fuck you took so long to get a mile away. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Why did it take you so long to go a mile? You know? But that doesn't happen today. Now, 6 weeks later, you're still waiting for a burglar. You've had all your locks replaced, you've had all your windows fixed, you've got the insurance money through from the insurance company, you've been out shopping with a wife, you know. You're not going to replace the stuff that was lost, because a lot of it has sentimental value, but you've replaced it as best you can, you know. And then you get a policeman comes along, by the time your wife polished the house 50 times, come on, we'll have to come along and dust the fingerprints. Well, don't bother, you know. You're not going to find any, so don't bother. With us, we would go there, I would go to your house, I would be there within 15 minutes or thereabouts. I would do my initial inquiries, I would make extensive local inquiries, I would tell you what you could and could not touch, and I would arrange first thing in the morning for the scenes of crime officer to come around and search the house for fingerprints and other forensic evidence, you know. It was what we called Operation Bumblebee. Operation Bumblebee. Part of Operation Bumblebee was if we were walking down the road on patrol and we saw Charlie Brown who we knew was an active burglar or an active drug dealer or an active street robber, then we would make a pocket entry of the fact that we'd seen him, where we'd seen him, what time we'd seen him, and what he was wearing, if he was in a vehicle, was he with anybody else and what they were wearing. We would go back to the police station when we went in for our break. We would enter that information into a log, and then once a week the collator would come along and he would take all of the crime sheets, and then he would go through all of those crime sheets, and he would go all through the log, and he would see which burglars were near which burglaries when they occurred, what cars they were with. And by then going around, they get a search warrant, they go around, they kick the guy's door in, and you find his garage is full of other people's property.
Yeah.
You know?
Just build up intelligence is what they're good at there.
It was simple, straightforward, everyday policing, and it worked.
Mm. We've got Bok with us, he's joined us on the conference. He's from Canada. I don't know if he's got anything he'd like to say.
Hello,
hey guys, I'm just listening here.
Alright, no worries.
Okay. I need a Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act for my collection, Bob.
Well, I would have failed some sort of test.
You would have. Well, so would I. In fact, when I applied to join the police force, they actually said that they didn't want me. Scotland Yard said they didn't want me. They were worried I would ask them why they didn't want me. They couldn't give me a good answer, so they were going to leave me to fail on interview. Unfortunately for them, I passed the interview, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, policing is one of the most satisfying jobs you can get, one of the most interesting jobs you can get, and it is a job which changes from, you know, dead boring to full overdrive in a fraction of a second, which is why policemen don't live long after they retire.
Mm.
I reckon the average police officer, after he's retired after a 30-year career, he dies within 5 years of retirement. Most of them within 2 years of retirement, because it's the constant switching on and switching off of the adrenaline and the shift work, and it's no good for you.
Yeah.
So
they normally don't live that long to collect that pension then.
no, they don't, and this is the point. They don't live long enough to collect a pension. And
the way things are going, and none of them are going to have a pension to collect.
Well, they reckon that this time next year there won't be any money in any pension pot. So I'm damned if I know what I'm going to do when I lose my pension, because I'm not fit enough to go to work anymore. At 70, I'm certainly not after chasing 20-year-olds around the block. You know, so
Something's got to be done, Albert.
of course it has, and that's what we're talking about, isn't it? How do we do it?
Is it? Are we going back to the neighbourhood watch?
Yeah. Well, let me talk about neighbourhood watch. You are getting lots of burglaries. You come home in the night time, you get up in the morning, all the car wing mirrors have been ripped off all down your road, and you phone your local police and you get nothing. Yeah. So what you do is you form a neighbourhood watch or a residents association, and then you send an invitation to the local chief superintendent and ask him if he will come along and so that for introductory purposes, he will come along with the local area inspector and your local home bee officer. And these three gentlemen arrive, not realising that you are going to ambush them. And so you get a series of people who are all been primed primarily with the questions, and the rest of the audience are primed as to what to do about it. And you actually make it perfectly plain to the chief superintendent that unless things improve drastically in your area, you are, as a community, are going after his job. Now, he's not going to like that. So when we get to the police station, the chief superintendent is going to kick the inspector all round the police station. So the inspector's not going to like that very much, so he's going to kick the home beat officer around the police station. And the home beat officer is going to see his friends who are on the religious meeting and say to them, can you please pay extra attention to my beat, because I'm in the shy here. So for the next foreseeable future, instead of having a police car pass through his beat once a week, they're going to be passing through 5 times a day. Instead of having police officers walking his beat once a day, they're going to be walking his beat all day. And the crime is going to be driven off of his beat.
Yeah.
Because no criminals commit crime when they think there's policemen around by the dozen, right? It's all going to go to somebody else's beat. That's not your problem. That's their problem. But what you do is you get somebody in that area and you say to them, well, this is what we've done, boys and girls. This is what you have to do. And you have to do that. And that way it ends up with the police going proactive out to catch criminals instead of swanning round in fluorescent jackets looking like bloody Christmas trees at Christmas, when everybody can see them for miles, and just missing all of the crime completely. You know, so another thing that they can do, and we used to do quite successfully, we would flood an area with uniformed police officers in high visibility jackets and police cars, knowing full well that the criminals were going to see this, and they would go to an area and they look for an area where there were no uniformed police officers and no police cars, and they would start burgling there, and that's where we had all our plainclothes police officers and our unmarked cars. And you'd be amazed what your detection rate goes up at. But it needs somebody to get behind the chief superintendent and stamp up and down on the bollocks. Because unless you do that, unless you have an exceptionally good chief superintendent, and the chances are that once he gets to be superintendent, or chief superintendent, he's thinking to himself, well, I've got another 3 years to go and I'll claim my pension. So he's going to coast. And you can't afford him to coast. So you actually go out of your way to make sure that he does the job properly in the way it is supposed to be done. That makes sense?
Yeah, indeed, yeah, it does.
So what's your feeling about all these supposed general public positions who think they've got just as much authority as a police constable?
Well, they don't, in fact, because you can make a citizen's arrest, yeah?
Yeah. I'm talking about silly things like TV licence people.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, they can't have the same authority as a police constable. They can't actually enforce the law. It's not realistic.
They can't, and it's stupid. You see, this is the free man on the land rubbish. This started out in America, didn't it, with Schaefer Cox and people like that. Then it went through Canada with Rob Menard. Yeah. It arrived over in bloody England with people like John Harris.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's in that fact, though, I mean, but anybody who knows a little bit about policing or even reads a bit about it should know that a TV licence inspector has no authority of enforcing any law.
Well, no, that's actually not entirely true.
Well, he's not a police constable. It's a justice.
No, he's not. No, he's not a police constable. However, the law which deals with television licences, the law which deals with local councils over council tax, the law which deals with your utility suppliers, your gas and electricity, your oil companies, those sorts of things. These laws all carry a specific enforcement section of them. There is no point in making a law if you leave that law without the teeth to enforce it. So your local gas board can come along and demand entry to your house to check the gas facility in your house. And you can't use that. Yes, if necessary. necessary, yeah.
What? So they can unlawfully break into your property without
Yeah, but you see, it's not unlawful because the law relating to the gas.
You've got to be very careful there, though, Albert.
No. The law, You'll end up with a society thinking a dustman can tell you what to do. No. You've got to be reasonable about it. You've got to be reasonable. And you know, everybody knows your dustbin is there to empty the dustbins, and they normally do that by leaving half of it down the road, right? So basically, but where somebody comes along and they have, like your gas company or your electricity company or the water board, come along and they supply a service to your house, they have written into the agreements and written into the law a facility to be able to force entry.
Is that a contract, Albert?
What?
Is that a contract?
It's the law of the land. It is the statute.
No, I didn't ask that. I said, are they contracts?
Yes, they're contract, but it's statute law. You sign a contract with the gas company that they will supply you with the gas, right?
I don't sign contracts, no.
No. Okay, fine. Well, you don't, but most people do. I sign a contract.
Have a verbal agreement.
I sign a contract with a gas company. They will supply me gas.
Right. So they provide you with the laws of contract, which is full disclosure.
Yes, and it will say on it.
But when you
your contract will say on it that under
it's got to have full
under
disclosure.
certain circumstances that the supplying authority, the gas board or the water board or the electricity board, will have the right to gain access to your house. Now, ordinarily, because we all like to be civilised, don't we? The gas board will write you a letter, and they'll say that we are coming along because we need to check that the appliances are safe for the gas supply that we have. Because don't forget, when we went from coal gas to North Sea gas, every gas appliance in the country had to be changed.
As long as that letter's hand delivered, it can't be put through any sort of mailing system. It has to be personally delivered.
No, it can come through the post, and all they do is they say, you know, on date, time and place, we would like to come along and inspect our gas pipelines into your house to make sure they're safe, whatever. The gas fittings are up to standard, whatever, right? And they will give you a time and a date. And then they will say in the letter, if this is not convenient, can you please phone this number and we will make an appointment come, right? At the end of the day, if they come along and you refuse them entry, at the end of the day, the law passed by Parliament will give them a right of entry by force if necessary. And this is the point, see? There is so much of this free man on the land shite out there that people think that common law covers everything. It doesn't. It really, really doesn't.
What if you don't? Let's just say, right, a scenario that you probably believe don't exist. I don't have to prove nothing, but say a gas company or a TV licence man or any civil enforcement officer of whatever, utility or whatever, right? Say you've gone out of your way and you have nothing to do with their services whatsoever, and they want to enforce to come into your property, even though you don't subscribe, you have no agreements, let's call it what they are, agreements, and yet they still want to force their way. What right have they got to do that?
They've got a right to do that purely and simply because they're supplying a service.
No, you don't.
I believe they do with the gas, Albert, because.
Let's take electricity, shall we?
I'd rather talk about gas.
Let's take electricity, right? A very common crime is what we call abstracting electricity.
Yeah.
That is where the electricity company cuts off the supply of electricity to your house, right? By disconnecting the electricity on the house side of the meter.
Yeah.
Yeah? It is very, very common for people simply to reconnect the supply themselves. Now this is extremely dangerous because you have to be a certified electrician to do it. I'm not saying it is an impossible job to do. It isn't. It's just a question of taking 3 bits of wire, put them in 3 holes and doing up 3 screws, right? But you are now getting electricity, which the electricity company are paying for, but which you are not paying them for, yeah? And that's known as abstracting electricity. Now, if your electricity company man walks down the road and he sees your house is blazing with lights and all the Christmas tree decorations are outside at Christmas, and he checks on his little list and says, hold on a minute, there's no electricity to that house, he is going to go away and he's going to do a report. The report will then go to a court. The court will then issue a warrant, and a policeman will arrive at your door with a warrant, asking for, in fact, instructing you to allow them to search the house. Now, you can't stop them coming in, and when they come in and they find that you've actually reconnected your electricity supply illegally, then you will be arrested for abstracting electricity, which is theft of electricity.
Well, what if you haven't?
Well, if you haven't, you've got to find a way of explaining where all this electricity is coming from, haven't you? Now, you could say, well, I'm not abstracting it. See, I've actually got a diesel generator that I fire out in the garden, right? Yeah. In that case, there is no problem. You simply walk the policeman round to the back of the house, go down the side of the house, walk him down to the back of the house, say, look here, officer, here is a diesel generator, right? I've got this big tank of oil here, which I pay for every month, and this is running my diesel generator, which is generating all the electricity for my house. Or, alternatively, look here, officer, if you look at the roof of my house, there's solar panels from one end of it to the other. If you look at my garage roof, there are solar panels tilted up on the garage roof. And if you look at the bottom end of my lawn, 3/4 of the bottom end of my lawn is also solar panels. I'm generating all of my electricity from solar power. I therefore don't need to be on the grid, right? In which case, the policeman's going to say to you, well, thank you very much, sir, and goodbye, sorry to have troubled you. But what the problem is, you see, and this is a real problem, is that people, they listen to people like John Harris and Rob Menard and bloody Schaefer Cox in America, they listen to them. And because these people haven't got the faintest fucking idea what day of the week it is when it comes to the law, they're spinning a story which just doesn't work out. And what happens is that the policeman comes to your door with a warrant, and instead of coming and saying, well, yeah, of course, officer, come in, have a look, you know, no problem, this is where I'm getting my electricity, it's my diesel generator or my solar panels that I built myself, went down the scrapyard, got a load of old radiators, wired them all up.
That's fine, yeah. I'll
That's
support
because
that.
a police constable's coming to do it. But I'm buggered if I'm going to let in a guy with a high-vis jacket on and a clipboard who is not a police constable.
Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you see, the law, I mean, you say...
That's fine, go and get the constable, get the job.
That's fine. But the law authorises the electricity company to actually send that man along to check on the premises where you're getting your electricity from. The law, as passed by Parliament, actually allows it. Now, if you obstruct him, you're actually in breach of the court order that issued the warrant.
I'm talking before orders.
I think it comes down to, you know, if you're going to refuse a gas worker in to check on supply, then that's putting the rest of the public at risk, and that's a serious offence.
Absolutely. But the thing is, PJ, what I mention is, if you allow all these ordinary people who've got no training whatsoever about going in about their business or whatever, if you allow just ordinary people to enforce civil laws,
I understand that, yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't say that they have no training. I mean, I had a friend who worked in the electricity company. He worked in the office, right? Normally, he worked in the office, but he was sent off on training so that he could go around houses, and he had to get highly qualified to go around the houses and actually inspect installations and stuff. But normally, his job was in an office just pushing a pen. Every now and again he would have to go out and he would have to inspect an installation and approve it. Now he's got the certificates that allow him to do that. Now, so you can't actually say that this guy is coming along and, you know, he's got no more bloody training and experience than my
I don't know him from Adam. I don't know whether he's coming to case the job. I don't know whether I can trust him. He's got no redress with him because he just flashes a plastic car with a mugshot on. He's not got a police uniform on. He hasn't got a number. He hasn't got a warrant card.
Yeah, but you see, a policeman does not have an automatic right of entry to your house anyway.
I know. Of course, he's got to have a warrant.
You know.
He's got to have a signed warrant.
Well, no, it doesn't.
He has. Unless right, a crime has been committed and he's got tangible evidence. Absolutely not.
So I'll tell you what they need. They need to know whether you're actually in or not. If they know you're in, they'll kick that door off. If they don't know you're in, they won't touch the door.
For example, right? For example, I'm a policeman, and this is an actual case. I went to a house where there was water flooding out the door. The door was locked. We could get no answer from in the house. We thought that there was an elderly man who lived in the house. We thought he had got in the bath, run the bath, and possibly had a stroke or something was in the bath. We have an absolute right to break that door down and go in, which is what we did. What in fact had happened was, he'd started to run the bath. His mate had phoned up from downstairs and said, "Look, George, I'm going round the pub for a pint. You fancy a pint?" He said, "Oh yeah, bloody hell, I'll be down in 2 minutes." He just ran out the house, grabbed his coat, left the bath clean. Right? Came back to find he's got no front door. Yeah? A police officer, indeed anybody, even you, can actually gain entrance to somebody's house if you believe that you are there to preserve life. Now, this is the point, you see. People do not understand the law. They do not understand exactly how far a police authority is concerned. I arrest somebody, right? Say I arrested you for theft. Yeah, you've been out caught shoplifting. Yeah? I don't need a search warrant to come and search your house to find out what else you've stolen. I don't. I just go and see my inspector and say, "I have arrested Mr. Jones here for theft. He caught shoplifting 5 bottles of scotch, right, down at that Safeways." Yeah?
That's tangible evidence, though.
Yeah, I know it's tangible evidence. But that's tangible evidence of the fact that you've stolen 5 bottles of scotch from Safeways.
Well, if you
I want to go back to your house to find out if there's anything else in your house that I've stolen, that's been stolen. I don't have any tangible evidence for that whatsoever. But what I do, I don't apply to, I used to at one stage have to apply to a court to get a magistrate to sign me a warrant to go and search your house. Now I don't. Now I get an inspector or above to authorise what they call a Section 18 search under the 1984 Police and Criminal Act. My inspector simply says, "Yes, okay, Albert, carry on, go and do the search." I arrive at your house and I say to your wife, "Look, I've arrested your husband, he's down at Kenton Police Station, right? He's been arrested for shoplifting 5 bottles of whiskey. I've come round now and I need to search the house to find out what else he's stolen." Your wife says, "You're not coming here." She plants her feet wide apart, puts her hands on her hips and says, "I refuse you entry, you're not coming."
Albert.
I say to your wife, "Look, I'm sorry, my darling, I have to come in and search the house. If you don't get out of my way, I will have no option. I will have to move you out of my way." And I can move her. And she can scream assault until she's blue in the face. It will get her nowhere. She'll be very lucky if she doesn't end up getting arrested for obstructing me.
So you being an honest copper goes in there and you find nothing and you say, "Sorry for disturbing you, love. You can now get on with your life and I'll leave you alone," right? That's a decent copper. But if you're a bent copper, you'll go in there and you plant something, don't you?
No, it's not nothing to do with being bent or straight.
No, but they do.
It's got to do with the way that people approach people. I naturally I naturally try to be nice to everybody. I don't think the fact that I've annoyed and that I've arrested you means I also have to be abusive to you or set out of my way to be nasty to you and annoy you in any way. But I arrested a drunk dealer, West Indian Rastafarian, one day. We got him down the police station, searched him. He had 35 wraps of heroin in his underpants, and he said to my sergeant, he said, "Sergeant," he said, "you know me. I've been arrested in front of you 35 times over the last 18 months. This is the first time I can actually say being arrested was a pleasant experience. Because I never saw it was any part of my job to be nasty to people. However, other policemen are not quite that way inclined. Other policemen come to work, they've had the mother and father of their rows with their wife, they want to fucking kick her head through the wall, they know they're not going to do that. They come up, they arrest you because you've broken the law, you're getting stroppy with them, and there is a strong tendency that you're going to get a backhander sooner or later. It's not right, it's illegal, it's not good police practice, but it's human. And this is the point. Police officers are human. And everybody thinks, oh, you know, you're a policeman, you're Superman. You're not a Superman, you're a human being with all the same pressures as every other human being. Every time the Chancellor puts petrol tax up for your car, he's put it up for my bloody car. Do you think I want to pay the petrol tax? I don't. Talking about petrol tax, I have a friend of mine. Hasn't paid petrol tax on his petrol for yonks. Do you know what he does? He goes to the garage, he fills his car up. He works out the cost, percentage-wise, of the petrol and the balance being the tax. He then pays the garage the percentage of the petrol. So he's paying for the petrol in full, but he's not paying for the tax. He gives the garage a little printed card, and he says, "This is my details, it's got all my vehicle registration and everything else on it. These are my details. Send this off to the Inland Revenue. When the Inland Revenue come along and ask for the tax, you tell them I haven't paid it to you, they are to collect it from me personally." Right? When the Inland Revenue eventually get around to going to see him, if they ever do, what he's going to do is say, "Yeah, oh God, I owe you £20,000 in petrol tax. Well, that's a lot of money. How much do you want for settlement figure?" They'll say, "Well, we want £20,000. He'll say, "Well, I'll give you 5. They'll probably end up settling somewhere between 10 and 12 and 15, right? But the Inland Revenue will take a settlement figure. He therefore has got his petrol and paid infinitely less tax than you and I who pay it at the pump.
That's how it used to work when I was self-employed many years ago. But
yeah,
it doesn't work like now.
Yeah. But my friend does it all the time. He hasn't paid tax on his petrol for yonks. And he said to me, he said, I keep worrying, it's about the fact they're going to knock on my door and arrest me. I said, what for? You haven't done anything. You have paid the petrol. You're not guilty of taking and driving. You're not guilty of driving away without paying for the petrol. All you've done is you've paid for the petrol, but not the tax. But you've given them your details so they can pass them on to the Inland Revenue. When the Inland Revenue come to see you, they're not going to come to see you with a policeman. They're going to send you a letter telling you owe them X amount of money in tax. You're going to write back and say, well, okay, fine. How do you work that out? They're going to write you another letter telling you how they work it out. You're going to write back and you're going to dispute that. And by the time you know where you are, you've got a nice conversation going on paper between you and the Inland Revenue. It's going to last several months. Then you're going to say, well, okay, look, I can't be dealing with this anymore. What's the settlement figure? Now, the Inland Revenue is going to say, well, he owes me 20 grand, right? But if I go to court and he contests it in court, it's going to cost me 20 grand to go to court. So you're already on a winner, aren't you? Because the Inland Revenue won't want to spend that 20 grand in going to court. You're already on a winner. So they are going to give you a settlement figure, which is infinitely less than the figure that you actually owe them in tax. Therefore, your petrol is there. They can't send a policeman around your house because the Inland Revenue tax is under administrative law, not criminal law. It's civil law. Civil law, they have to sue you. They don't get you arrested, they sue you, they send you an order to attend a county court, a summons to attend a county court, and then the county court will sort it out. So you're not going to get arrested ever because you haven't committed a criminal offence.
Same goes for council tax, doesn't it?
Well, council tax is a tax which is dealt with under administrative law, yes. It is, they are supposed to sue you in a county court to get their money.
How comes people end up in prison then?
What?
How comes people end up in prison?
Because they go about it the wrong way.
What, they do or the courts do?
What?
They do or the courts do?
They do.
They obviously refused, they never came to an agreement.
You see, if you see, there was an old lady, she died a couple of years ago. I'm trying to think of her name. Wonderful old lady. Her father had been a High Court judge in India when we ran India. So he was an English judge working in India, dispensing justice in India. He was a high-ranking High Court judge. She inherited all his law books. She herself had a law degree, but she never qualified as a barrister or a solicitor. And her council tax contained a portion of the council tax which dealt with the regional authority. So every year they wanted X amount of pounds off of her for the regional authority. So she wrote to the council and she sent them a cheque for her council tax, and she said, look, I'm paying you the council tax, X the amount for the regional authority, because I don't get a say on the regional authority. You appoint people to the regional authority, the government can appoint people to the regional authority. I can't elect them in or out. So without no taxation, without representation, so I'm not paying you for an organisation that I'm not represented on. Right? Mm-hmm. Council sued her. She won. That was the council with their local solicitor, yeah? Yeah, she won. The following year, they sued her again. This time they went to a firm of solicitor outside the council. She won. Every year for 12 years they ended up with the council employing the top Queen's Counsel in the country and the top solicitors in the country. And every year they went to court. She trashed them. A little old lady in her wheelchair, and she trashed them every time. But she was using real law. Not imagine free man on the land crap, which is what Roger Hayes and people like that are using. She was using real law. And she trashed them. And eventually, when the council were asking her for rather a lot of money, and she trashed them the last time, and the judge in the case, the High Court judge in the case, said, you can't come back for more. This is ridiculous. You keep coming in for this money. She keeps winning in every court she's been to, she's won. You cannot just keep coming back for another bite at the cherry. This is it. That's your lot. And then the council said, well, okay, but it's cost us £20,000 for this year's court case. Can we claim our costs off of her? Because had she, and their rationale was, had she paid them the tax, which the court had just said she didn't have to pay, because there was no legal justification for it, had she paid them that tax, they wouldn't have run up a £20,000 legal bill. And the court said, okay. So they then ordered her to pay the council's costs. Although she'd won the case, she was ordered to pay the council's costs of £20,000. That, in fact, would have bankrupted her and forced her to sell her rather nice house. Yeah? Within 2 weeks, by public subscription, her fine, her court costs had been paid.
So the only way that let's say for the Inland Revenue to ever get tax back is through like seizing assets left, not putting a will.
Yeah. Send the
It's actually to sue you in a court of law. Yes. That's how you have to get your tax back.
So what about?
No, I mean, other than that, the only way they're ever going to see money is if you die and you don't leave a will.
Yes, and there's nobody to inherit it.
Yeah, they've got to wait for that moment, or up until that point. Yeah, keep taking it to court.
You see, when people turn around and say there's no such law that says you have to pay council tax, that's total crap. We've had a law that says you have to pay council tax, a national law that says you have to pay council tax, since the Poor Law of 1571. Because Queen Elizabeth I became aware that a lot of people were injured in her service, in the armed forces, in the navy, had been injured, were unable to work because they'd lost arms or legs or whatever, and they were begging in the streets, and of course if they couldn't beg and get money, they would then have to go and steal to survive. A lot of people were too old or too infirm, or were born with physical defects that they wouldn't allow them to work, so they would steal quickly. Queen Elizabeth I said that that wasn't acceptable in a civilised society, and she ordered every local council to collect a penny in the pound tax every week, and that tax was to be used to house the vagrants in the area, who were to be given a proper accommodation, proper housing. They were to be given clothing, decent clothing. They were to be fed 3 meals a day, and they were to be given their medical expenses. If they needed medical treatment, that was to be paid for. And if they needed, to go down the pub of a night, they had to be given a certain amount of pocket money every week. That came from the local council. If the vagrant that they found lived in the local council area, then the council had to do it. This is what the almshouses are all about. Various charities started building houses, which they then put these vagrants into. That's what almshouses all over the country. There are almshouses all over the country. That's what they started about. The oldest one is actually in Warwick, which was a home for sailors from the Elizabethan Navy who'd been injured. It's still going today, and it has berths for 12 old sailors in it, and it's run by a retired naval captain. It is still going today, still in its original Tudor building, it's a beautiful building, all old oak and everything else, in Warwick. That's still going today. If you didn't come from the local area, say you were found in Warwick but you didn't live in Warwick, then what would happen was that you would be fed and clothed that night by the local council. Then in the morning, the constable would come and take you. He would walk you as far as the next constable, who would walk you as far as the next constable, making sure you had meals throughout the day. When you got to the next constable, the overnight stay, he would have to keep you overnight and feed you in the morning and walk you to the next constable. So if you were in Warwick and you lived in Southampton, you would be handed constable to constable to constable all the way until you got to Southampton, and you became the responsibility of the council in Southampton. That is your original council tax. And as you know as well as I do, if government wants to find a way of taking a tax off of you, they never ever surrender it. They change the name, they add things to it, they take things away from it, but they never ever give it up.
That's why they never take you. That's why you'll never get them into a court de jure on a civil charge. Because if it's a statutory one and you win the case, they have to scrap the statute.
Yeah, but you see, all this bloody different types of court nonsense is nonsense. We want a common law court. We hear it all the time. I want a common law court, common law court. You can only have a common law court if the court is hearing a case with a common law offence. Now, every court in this country is a common law court if it is presented with a case which has a common law basis.
What about fraud, Albert?
What about what?
Fraud. What's that?
Fraud?
Yeah.
Fraud.
That's common law, isn't it?
No, it is a statute offence. You will be prosecuted under the statute offence.
Alright.
There are only 2 real common law offences left on the statute books at the moment. One is breach of the peace, and the other is murder. So you are charged with murder.
What about bruising the body in the arm?
No, that's offences against the person act. No.
So that's so if you get done, if they want to do you for say somebody presses charges for GBH, you're going to do that in a magistrate's court, are you?
No, you're going to be taken to a magistrate's court originally,
Yeah.
and what will normally happen is, because grievous bodily harm contains, if you are, it's what they call an arrestable offence. If you are convicted on a first offence once over the age of 21, you can be sentenced to prison for 5 years or more. Then, because of that, you will be sent down by a magistrate, you will be bailed or you will be held in custody, depending upon the case and the magistrate's decision, until such time as you can be taken before a Crown Court, and you will be tried with a jury in a Crown Court. But you will be tried under the Offences Against the Person Act, which is statute law. If you kill somebody, you will be charged with Section 1 of the Offences Against the Person Act and murder at common law.
So why the Person Act?
Because they bring in all sorts of laws to cover different circumstances.
So what's the difference between a Person Act and
everybody
common law?
everybody thinks common law is original law, don't they?
Well, you kind of expect it to be a pretty just law, at least.
Well,
you know?
yeah, but everybody says that the mantra today, isn't it, is, I want to be tried under common law in a common law court. I don't want to be tried under statute law, because statute law I have to consent to. Isn't that the same? Isn't that the mantra that we have? And I don't consent to it?
Well, that's the main side of what people are saying, yeah.
Right, yeah, but it's absolute total nonsense. If you look at the history of the law, the very first codified law in this country was the law that Alfred the Great codified, when he took the best laws and customs from all of the old kingdoms that made his kingdom, and he wrote them in a book of law he called the Dome. He then showed the Dome to the Witan, which was his parliament. Yes? The Witan then approved of the law, didn't they? And it was then promulgated as Alfred's or the King's law. The very first promulgated law in this country for English people was actually statute law. The common law was where courts further down the line were dealing with cases under that first statute law, and they adapted the statute law to suit the personal circumstances of each individual case. And the common law was simply the courts adapting the statute law of Alfred to suit other cases. Now everybody thinks that statute law you have to agree with. You don't. Statute law is perfectly good law. The only thing about statute law today is that statute law has to comply with the spirit of the common law. Now the common law we know is based on statute law, but it's based on good statute law, and it's been, good statute law has been improved by the common law. So we say that the common law, statutes today have to be consistent with the spirit of the common law. If they're not consistent with the spirit of the common law, then they don't apply, because they are void. Right? And that's it, really. You see, there's all sorts of law out there. For example, we see, don't we, an awful lot, don't we, about child stealing by the state. Yeah?
Yeah.
Today, that's prevalent all over the world, isn't it? Even in Canada, right? What happens over here is that the council come along and for the flimsiest reason take your child. Yeah? You argue about it, they write you a report which they know to be untrue. Yeah? You sit there and you scream blood and blue murder that your child has been kidnapped by the state and all the rest of it, yeah? What you should be doing is looking at the paperwork that the council have given you. Because if you can prove that the letter the council wrote you, or the evidence the council presented to the court, is not true, and that evidence was put on paper, then you can prove that the council have issued a false instrument contrary to Section 8, the 1981 Forgery and Counterfeiting Act. Now, I know a couple and their children, the council hadn't taken their children, but they were going to take the children. And I said to them, is there anything in the council's, in the social worker's paperwork which you can prove conclusively is not true? And she said, yes, quite a bit of it. I said, okay, go to the police station, report your local social worker for issuing a false instrument contrary to Section 8 of the 1981 Counterfeiting and Forgery Act. They didn't do that. They wrote to the council and said, we are going to be taking this up with the local police, and we are going to be reporting you for issuing a false instrument contrary to Section 8 of 1981 the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act. By return, they got a letter from the council, social services. We're not interested in your child. We don't want your child. You're perfectly welcome to keep your children. You know? There are ways and means of doing it, but you have to understand the law. And also, there's so much there is so much airy-fairy misunderstanding of the law going on.
Yeah, so you could do that, right, with all, I would argue the case, the majority of council tax demands issued by the council themselves from a bulk centre that is not a court.
It depends upon whether it's issued as a court thing or not. If it's issued, if the council are saying to you, as they do, you owe us, say, £1,500 for this year's council tax, and that is broken up into X amount for the police subsidy, X amount for clearing your dustbins, X amount for looking after the insurance, X amount for street lighting, X amount to pay the wages at the town hall, whatever, yeah? They break it down for you. You get a little booklet every year telling you what they're spending your money on, right? If you then
they're sending you a final demand.
Yeah, okay, and
they're saying...
And if they send you a final demand, and you haven't argued it, you haven't paid it, and so they send you a final demand. If they send you a final demand, that's not a court paper. That's just the council saying, if you don't pay this by X date, we will be taking you to court to recover that money. Right?
So they then send you a...
So they then send you what purports to be a court order.
That's it, yes.
Right. If they send you what purports to be a court order, and you can prove it is not a court order, and it's fairly easy to do that, because you simply go down and see the clerk of the court and say, I've had this, I've had this, was it issued by this court? The clerk of the court look at it and say, no, nothing about that, it's not got our stamp on it and all the rest of it, okay? Not signed by any of our judges, that's okay, so that's fine, right? You can prove it. You say, can I have a note to that effect? He gives you a note to that effect. You go down to the police station, you say, I want to see an inspector, and the inspector comes out and you say, this is what I've had from the council, and he'll say, oh yeah, well why don't you just pay it? And you say, well, I don't want to pay it because I dispute what they're asking for, but that's not why I am here. I am here because this purports to come from a court of law. Here I have a letter or a note from the clerk of that court which they say issued this, and the clerk of the court is saying here on paper, on headed note paper, that in fact, signed by him, that in fact his court never issued this piece of paper. So I now want you to investigate the man at the council who issued this to me for issuing a false instrument contrary to Section 8 of the 1981 Forgery and Counterfeiting Act, which is a criminal offence for which you go to.
Yeah, and if he turns around and says, yes, I'll take a note of that, thank you very much, I'm not giving you a crime number, I'm not giving you anything, and then, no,
you don't go off, do you? Well, if he says, no, you don't. If he says to you, well, I'm not going to give you a crime number or no, what he can say is, I need time to consult about this, and then I'll come back to you, right? And you say, okay, that's fine, right? You go and consult, and then come back to me, yeah? Now, he then comes back to you, or you go back to him because you've not heard anything, and he says, oh yeah, well, we're not going to do anything about it because, you know, it's the council and we're not going to prosecute the council. Then you say to him, right, fine, can I have your shoulder number, please, Inspector Jones? I know what your name is. Can I have your shoulder number? He will give you his shoulder number, because inspectors don't have a shoulder number which is visible, so you can't see it, but they do have a number for the purposes of radio calls. Alright? And all inspectors have a similar number within a certain group of numbers, right? Right? So you then get his name, you've got his number and everything else, right? And then what you do is you ask to see another inspector, and you say to him, I want to submit a formal allegation against this officer for a neglect of duty. Right? Now, that inspector is no skin off his nose. Right? He might not even like the inspector you're complaining about. They might hate one another. Maybe he came home one Christmas and found him shafting his wife. I don't know. But nevertheless, they might hate one another. It's no skin off his nose. Even if they're best friends or worst enemies, he is required by the law, by police procedure, to fill in the form. It's not him that makes the decision on it. No, he fills in the form, right? It's like a booklet of A4 pages, yeah?
Yeah, but where does that go, Albert?
Hang on, if you listen, I will tell you. Then what happens is, he will read you the questions off the page, you answer the questions, he will fill in your answers. One of the questions he will ask you is, are you prepared to settle for an informal resolution? The answer is no. It is always no. Right? Mm-hmm. Informal resolution means that the inspector comes over to you and says, look, I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to piss you off. I'm really, really sorry. But he's still not going to investigate your crime. You're still not going to get any allegations sorted out, right? So the answer is always no. You want it to go the whole hog. Once that's done, you ask the inspector who's filled in the form to let you have a photocopy of it. Right? So he should then go away and photocopy the form. Give you a copy, which you take away with you. He will then fax that form to the complaints department as a heads up that it's coming. He will then put the form itself in a brown internal envelope, and he will send it to the complaints department through the internal mail. When it gets to the complaints department, whoever it is, chief superintendent, chief inspector, whoever's running that complaints department that day, will then allocate an officer to investigate your allegation. And they should come along and see you. If they haven't been to see you within a certain period of time, they will write and say, well, the sergeant so-and-so has been tasked with investigating it, right? If they haven't seen you within a certain period of time, you say to them, when are you coming to see me? I require somebody to come and see me and take a statement. Yeah? And you persist on that. If you persist sufficiently, you will get the result you want. If you're going to walk away and say, oh dearie me, this is too much trouble, the council are eventually going to send a bailiff who's going to kick your door in and nothing's going to happen about it. So, but you have to do it the right way. You have to do it the right way. And this is what I'm saying to you.
But the thing is, all the time that investigation or that complaint's going through, can the council still carry on?
Well, no, you write to the council and you tell them you've submitted a formal allegation to the police about them, and the whole thing is under investigation by the police. And until such time as it's been investigated by the police, you would like the council to put hold on demanding the money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you do is you put the money into a bank account, preferably a high return bank account, and you let it sit in the bank account so that if it takes 3 years to actually get the thing to come through, that you've got to pay the money, right? You've got 3 years' money in a high interest account. So what you do is you take out the money that you have to pay the council, and you've got all the interest on that money in your account, in your name, rather than in their account, in their name.
Yeah.
So, but in the meantime, if you know, by the by, whether you pay them in the long run, what would be the expected result if everything goes with it? Will somebody be held responsible in the council, or the police, or both? Well, listen, somebody's filed an unlawful legal document,
Yeah.
right? So somebody's got to be responsible.
Yes, and that's what your policeman is doing. Your policeman is supposed to be investigating that as a crime. Now, the policeman's supposed to be investigating that as a crime. Now, if the policeman comes back to you and says, well, we put the papers up to the Crown Prosecution Service, and the Crown Prosecution Service have said they're not prepared to progress it, there's insufficient evidence or whatever, then if you're like me, as a policeman, you go to the Crown Prosecution Service and you say, why aren't you prosecuting this case? And when they say, well, it's none of your business, you say, well, actually, I'm the arresting officer, it's all my business, everything's my business, you know. Will you explain to me, please? I'm asking you ever so nicely to tell me why aren't you proceeding with it? I think it's a good case. Is, for example, anything wrong with my paperwork? If they then come back and they say to you, as they said to me, we refuse to tell you, and I said to them, well, I have a system with my children. I ask them nicely to do something. If they don't do it, I tell them to do it. If they still don't do it, I count to 3. If I get to 3, they get smacked up and sent to bed without any supper. I said, now I've already asked you nicely to tell me. I'm shortly going to tell you to tell me. If, when I get to 3, I've not had a reply, I'm coming down there, I'm going to find out which of your solicitors made that decision. I'm going to arrest them for perverting the course of justice. And you can do that just the same, can't you? You can say, well, I want to find out who it was, and I'm going to prosecute them for perverting the course of justice.
Yes, that's right.
And you can go to courts and get a summons for it. You can make the allegation to the police. I want you to prosecute this Crown Prosecution Service solicitor for perverting the course of justice.
Now, if you get to the point, if we get to the point that a lot of these civil practices that the courts do issue it to a bulk centre who sign them by the thousands and get paid for it unlawfully. Fortunately, you can actually say.
Well, yeah, but you see, the reason
right,
they
so
do that...
If everybody stood up...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The reason they do it is because they get away with it.
Yeah.
If everybody stood up, as you say, and argued every single case, then they would see that they weren't going to get away with it. If every time somebody did that, a police report was made for criminal offence under the Counterfeiting and Forgery Act, or Forgery and Counterfeiting Act, then, you know, they would stop doing it, because sooner or later one of those criminal allegations is going to stick, and one of those solicitors and one of those council officers is going to go to prison, sooner or later. And you know, so it's up to you. I tell everybody, you get the standard of policing you insist on. If you don't insist on a high standard, don't expect it, because you won't get it. If you insist on a high standard, you will get a high standard. You know, but it's the same with everything in life. If you don't insist on a high standard, you won't get it. Anyway, chap, I've had enough for one night, so I'm going to go.
Well, listen, it's been really interesting, Albert. I might sound a bit indirect or direct with my questions, but there's reasons for it. And thanks very much for your info. And maybe a few people listen to this and learn a bit, and perhaps start taking responsibility and
Well, maybe you want to start taping them, putting them up on YouTube or something.
Yeah. Well, at least that's PJ. He's in control of that side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that, Albert.
Yeah. Maybe you want to start doing that, and then it'll go down as a conversation when it's, you know, more interesting than just somebody sitting there talking. Alright?
Alright, Albert. Thanks for joining.
Good night, Albert. See you again soon, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, good night, Albert.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.